It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Assimilation Policy. P.S. Chapter 2. Thanks to the book friend 2020101318425819 for 100 points, the book friend Mo Wen Choos In for 200 points and Wen Z Master for 500 points, as well as the monthly tickets and recommendation tickets of other book friends. This is the biggest move he has made in the past 6 years since he crossed over. It was because of this that he almost caused civil unrest in the Netherlands. Those businessmen who wanted to control the direction of the Netherlands have been wooed, suppressed, merged, and eliminated by him. The integration of power has been completed on their father and son. Although the parliament has taken some away in the past few years, William has been holding them tightly in secret. These two hands have made many people like Thorbecke sigh. William has completed the incorporation of the descendants of the remaining members of the East India Company since it was forcibly dissolved by Britain and other countries. Among them, the current Minister of the Navy Jan Peter and Minister of the Army Peter Darren are descendants of the East India Company. It was with their cooperation that he was able to complete the royal family's real control of the highest power in the Netherlands in just a few years, instead of the previous hundreds of years of merchants and the Dutch king jointly governing the country, and even being laughed at as the Dutch king was just a puppet. With Mark Lander's explanation, William IV understood the cause and effect. To put it simply, the supplier provided high subsidies on top of the government's subsidies, plus a job opportunity in a weapons parts factory with a good salary, which perfectly persuaded the immigrants who moved there from the mainland. This group of people played a shrewd calculation. Suppliers are naturally not angels. It is impossible for them to only pay benefits without making money. If the factory is built in Jakarta, Java Island, or even the closer Sulawesi Island, the freight for thousands of kilometers is much higher than these subsidies, and in terms of competitiveness, it is even more behind in delivery time than its counterparts on the Paradise Peninsula. This is not good for them, so everyone is scrambling to build factories on the Paradise Peninsula, which can be explained. Don't move the population in Jakarta too slowly. There are more than 2 million natives. They are all laborers. General, these people should all move. We can't oppress them as we did before. Now we should give them certain rights politically, but the premise is that they must be loyal to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Ministry of Education has set up a special organization to print new education textbooks that are intended to assimilate their sense of identity. In terms of education, they must require their children to go to school for Dutch education like the native Dutch, and slowly assimilate their tendency to national independence. Increase their sense of Dutch identity. Education Minister Ruud Bels nodded and said, "It has been implemented for 5 years. Now there are more than 1.5 million primary school students in East India, and 800,000 middle school students. The newly established University of Jakarta and other Surabaya universities and other colleges and universities have completed more than 100,000 graduates. The current literacy rate of the entire East Indian population has reached 20%. Yes, but we must continue to persevere. As long as their assimilation project is completed, the status of the Netherlands in the world will change dramatically. They are the link between Australia and the southeastern peninsula in the north, the Kingdom of Siam and its western areas. At present, European countries have not yet set foot in it. As long as the Netherlands obtains the identity recognition of the tens of millions of people in the East Indies, then they can use them as a fulcrum to pry open the hearts of the natives in other places, complete the acceptance of the Netherlands to easily contact them, increase trade volume, and completely open up the Dutch market there. Even after letting them down their guard, we are more likely to enter their national territory and incorporate them than other European countries. As for skin color, we can increase our blood there, that is, we can implement the Dutch native men there to increase the spread of blood and reproduce the population. I don't need to say this, you also understand it, all the people present are men, so they naturally understand what it means. William IV reminded, but pay attention, the Netherlands also practices a civilized system of monogamy. Don't become the target of legal sanctions. Everyone nodded and naturally agreed. The economic model of the Far East cannot be too single. Let's put it this way. There are almost all populous countries in the north, and bicycles and textiles are hungry markets there, so accessories can be produced there. In short, we need to develop the industry. I want to make it as developed as the mainland. This is why I started education there. With a group of indigenous people who have been to school, the Netherlands can go further on the road of industrialization. Now that the Northern Territory and Queensland have joined the Netherlands, we can also include these two places in the development track of the Far East. The mainland of Europe is too close to war and it is easy to cause instability. Therefore, in the future, the Far East will be the unchanged development direction of the Netherlands for the next 50 years. I named this policy Front Shop and Back Factory. Seeing that everyone did not understand, he explained, it is the strategy of making industrial products made in East India, but bringing them to the mainland and implementing sales in Europe. Therefore, that place will become our rear area. The 60,000 troops must always be vigilant against the danger of being invaded. There, the same security work as the mainland will be implemented. William IV said to several military personnel solemnly, "Tell your soldiers in the Far East that if anyone dares to invade our territory and bully our citizens in the Far East, you don't need to arrest or resist directly. Just kill them first and report later." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Your Majesty, this time we are conducting a joint exercise with the Navy of the Tsarist Russian Empire. What scale of our forces will be involved in this exercise?" William IV looked over and saw that it was the Chief of Naval Staff Joseph Katz who was speaking. Of course the scale cannot be small. If it is small, it will make this exercise look petty and make other countries laugh. It is better not to hold it. How about this? Half of the local navy should be dispatched. Half of the 90,000 tons of the Dutch Navy is the largest scale. Fortunately, the situation in Belgium has been mild recently, and the Navy has been able to be withdrawn because of the recent deal with Britain. And more importantly, the other party in the exercise is the Russian Empire. If the Netherlands is attacked at this time, it will also be an attack on the face of the Russian Empire. Alexander, who attaches the most importance to face, will naturally not be easy to mess with. I think even Napoleon III would not choose to annoy Alexander in this way at this time. What's more, the Netherlands is still an ally of France today, and Britain is even more impossible, because the negotiations on South Africa are still being held in Paris, but the ones who are executing the negotiations are only the deputy foreign ministers of various countries who stay there. Chapter 102 Proxy War in South Africa. In Paris, the deputy foreign ministers of various countries were arguing for their own interests, and the representatives of various countries in South Africa were also taking various actions for this purpose. In South Africa, in the temporary governor's mansion in East London, the new governor of South Africa, Jobbin, was in a good mood recently, because the recent war in the Zulu kingdom was moving more and more towards the result that the British Empire wanted. Especially when he saw the former Governor-General Shepstone bowing his head in front of him, he burst into pride. He even hummed a little song, and his comfortable mood made the serious guards outside the office look relaxed. The Netherlands, Prussia, and the French dogs, aren't they afraid of retaliation? At this time, the 30,000 support troops formed by Asia are still heading towards the Transvaal Republic. "Governor, this is not good for us." The speaker was the former Governor-General Shepstone, who is now Jobbin's advisor. The two of them have a history. At the beginning, they were strong competitors for the governor of South Africa. In the end, due to their different attributes, Shepstone was a Tory and Jobbin was a Whig. Shepstone was promoted by Prime Minister Staley when the Tories were in power in 1859. He defeated Jobbin, who was supported by the Whig Party, and came to South Africa. Unexpectedly, the situation changed. 3 years later, he was defeated, and the Queen asked him to hand over his work to Jobbin as an advisor. So there is the current scene. Although the two are now subordinate, they have never stopped fighting, although it has not been surfaced. But the hostile relationship between the Tories and the Whigs has extended to them. However, despite this, the two dare not despise the situation here because they are afraid of the pressure brought by London. In particular, the opponents facing London are no longer these natives, but opponents formed by other countries whose power is not much weaker than theirs. They are already using agents to fight them, and their intentions are naturally causing trouble for Britain. The convening of the Paris Conference has made everyone see the true and false situation in Britain. Jobbin stared at Shepstone and said, "Don't forget, when we faced the situation in Belgium this time, it was the Queen's uncle who died, but in the end, they all gave in. What does this mean? You know it without me saying it. I know your sister." Shepstone cursed in his heart, Why haven't I seen you say this before? In London, Jobin, as a member of the House of Commons, was known for his courage and bravery. When he was competing with him for this position in London, he always criticized Shepstone for being cowardly and not daring to express his dissatisfaction with the country's development. Unlike him, Jobin, he even appeared in major newspapers every few days to express his dissatisfaction with the fact that the Queen was grieving the death of her husband all day and forgot to manage the country. He asked the Queen not to hide in the Isle of Wight to lick her wounds and sadness alone, but to turn her grief into strength and make the country more prosperous to erase her sadness. Shepstone rolled his eyes at the other party and cursed inwardly. How beautifully he said those words at the beginning, making him seem like the most patriotic person in the whole of Britain. Since he replaced me as the Governor-General of South Africa, he has been blaming me every other day, and all the crimes are thrown to me. Even now, facing London's retreat in Belgium, he would definitely launch a wave of criticism in the past, but now he's as quiet as a turtle, lying still. The Zulu kingdom is now dying, and its destruction is a matter of time. Kaziaweyo can no longer escape our pursuit. As for the Transvaal Republic, Shepstone was about to make a sarcastic remark, wanting to provoke the other party to be as timid as a mouse and dare not touch the Transvaal Republic, but before he started, he held back his words. Report to the Governor-General, a large-scale army has appeared in the Zulu kingdom, with a number of about 10,000. According to the analysis of our intelligence personnel in front, it is an army from the Transvaal. Are you sure? Jobin stood up immediately, anxiously grabbing the collar of the sergeant who delivered the message. Yes, this is the specific letter from Major General White on the front line. He took it and opened it hurriedly. His eyes quickly fell on it, and the letter fell to the ground. How dare they? Shepstone picked it up, opened it and saw a note on it. Governor, the Transvaal Republic sent 10,000 troops southward to the two towns of Dundee and Ladysmith on the border of the Zulu Kingdom. In the territory of the Zulu Kingdom, they finally met our army in the southwest, and they directly attacked us. The most hateful thing is that the Orange Free State also launched an attack on our town of Stromberg in the east at this time. The situation is urgent and we request support. Now the total number of British troops in South Africa is about 60,000, and 40,000 have been sent to the east to attack the Zulu Kingdom, and 10,000 in the north to guard against the Orange Free State moving south. The remaining 10,000 people are stationed in Cape Town to prevent the situation of being occupied last time. There are also troops there to support the front line. Shepstone was a little worried at this moment, but when he saw the development of the situation above, he felt familiar. Wasn't this the old road he had taken? At this moment, he felt a little sympathetic towards Jobin, because if he failed to capture the city and was captured instead, the anger in London would definitely be greater than the last time he faced it. Ask Cape Town to support 5,000 people to the eastern battlefield. Jobin hesitated, gritted his teeth, and said decisively, ask the army in the north to withdraw 5,000 people to the south to replenish here. I don't believe that my luck is so bad. Isn't it too risky? Shepstone said worriedly. He was not worried about Jobin's future, but worried that he might be captured by the enemy in East London. If that happened, it would be really ridiculous, and he would have no face to return to London. In fact, his worry was right, because the attack from the Zulu Kingdom this time was not ordinary fierce, and the troops were divided into many groups and went south. The Zulu Kingdom was already under the general occupation of the British Army. Just when British Army Major General Bride of the Eastern Front thought that the other side was about to perish, although they suddenly showed violent resistance, he did not care, because he thought it was just a dying struggle. But he was wrong, just like his boss Jobin, they were all wrong. Just like Queen Victoria and Viscount Palmerston thought that the situation here was already safe, the situation once again deviated from their predictions. The complexity of the situation in Africa far exceeded their expectations. On June 6, 1862, the soldiers of the Transvaal Republic and the Orange Free State, disguised by the Zulu Kingdom, respectively, started close-range shooting with the British Army at two locations in the east in coordination with the soldiers of the Zulu Kingdom. The British were caught off guard and suffered countless casualties. The 40,000 troops deployed in the east lost more than 15,000, and there were also many others injured. In short, the loss of combat power exceeded half. On the 8th, the Zulu Kingdom deployed two armies of more than 10,000 people in Stromberg and Durban, which was recaptured again. The army in East London, which had just suffered a defeat, was attacked from both north and south. Although it still had 20,000 men, it was already a frightened army. How much fighting power did it have? Soon London received the news of the defeat, and immediately there was a lot of shock and curses. Chapter 3, 2 more chapters. Chapter 103 Responses from various countries. 3 months, Britain was completely humiliated. In recent months, Britain has been holding its head very low, and has been humiliated again and again. South Africa is too far away from the mainland, and many people have not felt that the situation there has anything to do with them in the past, but now they feel that it is closely related. In 1860, Dickens' second daughter Kate Dickens married the famous British playwright Charles Collins, Wilkie's younger brother, which caused a sensation in Europe. Many people thought that this was a strong combination, an alliance to write novels and direct dramas. Charles Dickens settled in Gates Hill, which was only for British celebrities. It was on May 1st that Dickens' new work Great Expectations began to be serialized in the famous British magazine all year round, instead of his old work Notes of a Non-Traveling Salesman. Due to the war, people's attention was taken away by the news, and sales were not good. On June 10th, Dickens, the most influential writer in Britain today, expressed his dissatisfaction with the British government at the end of his novel, especially noting his condolences for the lives lost by British soldiers and condemning the British government for ignoring the survival rights of British soldiers. With the release of the largest magazine all year round, it attracted the attention of the whole of Britain and even overseas countries. The British government has been challenged unprecedentedly, and demonstrations in various places are like a new fire, burning into a raging fire. This time, even Palmerston felt the seriousness of the situation. The Queen of England rushed back to Buckingham Palace from the Isle of Wight again, and issued multiple orders to the military without stopping. As the domestic situation became increasingly serious, the army, which originally had only 370,000 soldiers, once again set out 100,000 soldiers to go south. We have encountered setbacks, but please don't be afraid. The British Empire will always be the winner, despite the current problems, and our opponents are not just one, but several. I swear, South Africa is definitely ours, and no one can take it away. Yes, even the Zulu kingdom. There is only one owner in southern Africa, and that is Britain. Please don't put too much pressure on the soldiers in front, because what they need is understanding and encouragement. Mr. Dickens' warning is also correct. We have been too comfortable for some time. Now is the time for Britain to wake up again. Everyone, please wait and see. The Queen of England delivered a brief speech, which was nothing more than asking for encouragement, seeking understanding, suppressing public sentiment, diverting hatred, etc. In short, she has placed her bets on the 100,000 army that was mobilized to go south to South Africa. The British 100,000 troops going south were such a big thing that the European countries naturally learned about it very quickly. The countries were deeply afraid of it, especially the strong transportation capacity of Britain, which made all countries very envious. The world's popular coachman, the Netherlands, was probably no more than that. At the same time, she was also happy about the difficulties Britain is facing now. Who wouldn't be happy to see a powerful country being humiliated? It's too simple to think that 100,000 troops can conquer South Africa, William Ivey said sarcastically, looking towards the British Isles in the west. It seemed that what was going on now was a drama, not a battle. William I and Napoleon I also had the same idea. Napoleon I could not help but sigh to Olivier. I think this is how the British viewed our war with Austria. They also had the idea of watching the show and then quietly taking advantage. Now, they have also bleed, and it is the kind of injury. Your Majesty, Britain is now making a big fuss in South Africa. After 2 defeats, the loss of more than 50,000 troops. The British army is originally smaller than ours. They have less than 500,000, and only 400,000 on the mainland. Now with 2 transfers to the south, there are only 270,000. It's a pity that we don't have a strong enough navy. Otherwise, the British Isles would be the best opportunity for our French army now. Napoleon I smiled coldly. The British Isles are impossible, but we can speed up our pace south of Algeria. If the Gulf of Guinea from north to south is opened, then for us, this is also thanks to the Transvaal Republic. I don't know if they can withstand the pressure of the 100,000 new British troops. But just resisting and dragging them there is the biggest gain. Wharton City. Lincoln has been very proud recently, because General Grant seems to have entered the state of hesitation in the South. The victory of a town is like pulling out a nail. The government led by him has received great support. Re-election is almost overwhelming. Originally, this made him very happy, but with the setbacks of Britain in South Africa in the past few months, he was even more excited. If possible, I hope that the British will be defeated there again with 100,000 troops. In this way, not to mention supporting the South, the management of Canada will be much looser. Will it be an opportunity for the United States? Lincoln's eyes burst into a gleam of light. If the South has been pacified by then, it can be considered carefully. Now the South is still the most important. It's a pity for this plan. Then he thought of the Netherlands again. It was complicated. The Alaska Peninsula was a kind of irony for him that the big countries did not care about the Monroe Doctrine of the United States, and it was also a relief that he did not have to face Tsarist Russia anymore. Alaska Peninsula, sooner or later we will get it into the hands of the United States, just like Seward said, the East Pacific, there is only one master, that is the United States, and it can only be the United States. When the British army of 100,000 was preparing to go south again from London, South Africa did not stop. The Zulu kingdom took the test and counterattacked. They began to quickly gather and attack. In addition to the 2 garrisons at the border with the British army, the rest of the Zulu kingdom and the Transvaal Republic divided 5 troops as an important part of the plan, which will pass through the kingdom of Basutoland and bypass the 20,000 British troops heading to East London. On June 8, 1862, a specially trained 3,000-man force was ordered to go all the way down and arrived 100 kilometers away from Cape Town, ambushing on both sides of the official road. From the evening of June 10 to the early morning of June 11, this surprise force, under the cover of night, launched an attack on the 5,000 British troops who had just passed there and were preparing to rush to the east. The 5,000 people were actually defeated by the attack of 3,000 people. They were almost completely wiped out. On the morning of June 11, they wanted to take the opportunity to infiltrate, but they were met with a resolute attack from the British garrison in Cape Town. A day later, with the support of 10,000 reinforcements, their forces were overwhelming, so it didn't take long for them to capture the city. However, the British troops who evacuated outside relied on the fortress and still held their ground, posing a threat to the city. However, this was already a victory for these mixed forces of Zulus and Transvaal people. When Jobman and Shepstone, who were far away in East London, heard the news that Cape Town had been captured again, their faces had changed from the joy of having just received support from 100,000 troops in London to death. Chapter 4. Chapter 104, The Partition of Africa begins with Congo. It's over, we're all done. Shepstone also had a helpless look on his face, secretly thinking, if I had known earlier, I would have gone back to London to meet those mocking eyes. If that was the case, I could have sat and watched the joke now. But at the beginning, I was reluctant to stay, wanting to observe Job's weaknesses up close. Unexpectedly, I was humiliated for the second time. It seems that I can't go back to London. The next stop is to go to Wellington, which is a good place. He thought of his good friend George Grey, who was the former Governor-General of South Africa. At the beginning, he was able to defeat Jobs because of his recommendation in the House of Lords. Now he is the Governor-General of New Zealand, so he can go to Wellington. At the same time, with the approach of 100,000 British troops, they obviously felt the pressure. Just when the people in various countries who were paying attention to the situation here moved their stools and prepared to watch the show, watching the British and Zulu Kingdom as agents, a news that a reporter broke out shocked all countries. Even the British were shocked, and even the Palmerston cabinet held a special meeting for this. Angola, West Africa. It is the most economically valuable and richest colony of the Kingdom of Portugal. Since 1475, the Portuguese Diogo Cao led a fleet of 7 ships, carrying hundreds of soldiers and a small number of missionaries, sailing along the west coast of Africa in order to explore the sea route to India. He finally arrived in Luanda in Angola, discovered the coast of Angola, and erected monuments at the mouth of the Congo River and St. Augustine to prove that this is a Portuguese colony. In order to pass the news back, he couldn't wait to return to Portugal with a group of black slaves. 8 years later, Diogo returned to Angola, and the slaves he took away returned to Angola with him. At that time, Diogo contacted the Kingdom of Congo and won the friendship of the King of Congo. Therefore, the King of Congo also sent an envoy to stay in Lisbon for a long time. In 1491, Another Portuguese fleet arrived in Angola and penetrated into the capital of the Kingdom of Congo, more than 100 kilometers west of the Congo River. After that, the Kingdom of Congo allowed Portugal to set up an embassy and started trade relations between the two countries. These natives and Portugal developed a deep friendship. In 1575, the Portuguese, who had figured out the details, began to occupy the south of Congo and established the city of Luanda. At the same time, they conquered the indigenous tribes in time, so that the white people slowly immigrated to Angola. In the next 50 years, the Portuguese began to expand their territory. In 1617, the Portuguese established the city of Benguela in Angola. Their power was very consolidated, and from then on, the Portuguese position in Angola was further confirmed, and European countries also confirmed Portugal's occupation status. However, the rising Nordic maritime power, the Netherlands, began to slowly move south to occupy some ports between 1640 and 1648. However, later, with the opportunity of the wars between the Netherlands and Britain at sea, Portugal took the opportunity to regain them. The current governor of Angola is Salazar Caio, a descendant of Diogo Caio. June 7, 1862. Banana port outside the small town of Cabinda, at the entrance of the Congo River. Period. Boss, why did we come to Soyo this time? Is there any decision from above? Mark Carter is now a Portuguese soldier in Angola, stationed in Soyo, the northernmost city. Next to him is their captain Edward Abor, who is also the highest military commander of Mbanza Congo City. In fact, it is only a team of 500 people. Just know it, don't spread it around. Abor still trusts his confidants very much. Of course, he is also more tolerant, which is why all the subordinates here respect him very much. They were all willing to hand their lives over to him. After all, coming here meant that they would have conflicts with the natives at any time. Moreover, the naval fleets of European countries would stop here from time to time. If they encountered small countries, it would be fine. But they were afraid of encountering the kind of countries like France and Austria, and the Russian Empire. They were used to being bullied by their tyranny. Every time, they were saved from danger by Abor's cleverness, and there was no dispute. You know, if they were killed in a dispute, would the Portuguese government help them to avenge? Just think about it and go to bed. Don't dream. It is said that the domestic situation is relatively stable, but the Dutch have been in the limelight in Europe recently. Mark Carter said jealously, the Dutch caravans that have come here recently are more arrogant than each other. It is said that their King William IV has to let people line up to choose wives one by one. They are princesses from various European countries, but now he can choose them like picking cabbages. It is so enviable. It is also said that the islands captured by the Dutch in the Pacific are just like picked up. One ship can take over dozens of islands. It is so cool. Boss, if Portugal also lets go of its hands and feet, it will definitely not be worse than them, and may even do better. When I think of the despicable appearance of those people, I am so angry that I have nowhere to vent. If I see a Dutchman now, I will definitely pull him over and cut him into pieces to vent my hatred. SHH, boss, what are you shushing about? Mark Carter was about to ask him why, but a large ship appeared on the sea. To be precise, it was a military transport ship that came to the banana port 2 kilometers away. Then they saw a lot of soldiers getting off it one after another. Yes, a lot of them, densely packed, more than all the Portuguese soldiers in Mbanza Congo City, at least 1,000 people or more. No, at least 3,000 people, Edward Abel said solemnly. Ah, this is too surprising, that's the Dutch flag. Mark Carter was shocked and suddenly wanted to slap his mouth. He had just scolded the Dutch, and now they appeared, and there were more than 1,000 people. This was the scale of the army that directly crushed Carbon. That was the regular army of the Netherlands. As the highest officer here, Edward Abel was knowledgeable. He had seen many soldiers from various countries, and there were countless armies coming and going from the south and the north. Boss, what are they doing? They are landing at the mouth of the Banana Congo River. That is a small temporary port. If they want to repair, Luanda port is a good port. It is well equipped and a better place for them. Why do they want to land there? Edward Abel was puzzled. This was definitely not the first time the Dutch came here. Judging from their actions, they were obviously familiar with the terrain and landed here. The people here also knew that it was not far from the big port of Luanda, but they chose to land there. This revealed a bad feeling for him. What was the problem? Chapter 5 today. Chapter 105 Shocking the World. Boss, 3,000 people are landing. Is this a battle? Mark White asked. And what are those small boats used for? There are more than 20 of them. Those are small landing boats that have just become popular. They are used to patrol the coastline and open up new land. They are small ships, small sailing boats that are not even rank 6 battleships, said Edward Abel. But this is by the sea. There should be big ships here. Why do they put the small boats in formation? And it seems that the flagship is facing upstream in the direction of the Congo River. Boss, are they training troops? They are deliberately coming here to rush down the waves, Mark White said teasingly. Don't be naughty. Wait, what is that? Aren't they heading towards the Congo River? Abel asked uncertainly. It seems so. Mark White had actually gotten the answer after he finished speaking. Yes, those people were driving boats towards the Congo River, and in addition to these 20 boats, there were more than 2,000 people quickly following on the shore. Looking at the situation, the two looked at each other. Neither of them understood what these people were doing. However, before they could think about it, they felt a loud noise. This is the sound of the gunboat firing. The two looked at each other again. The direction was the middle of the Congo River, and the place where the shells fell was the hills on the shore. Is it an exercise today? Otherwise, why would these Dutch march here and fire shells? Both of them had questions. Boss, I think their purpose is not simple. After hearing what White said, Abel took a deep breath. Abel knew that he could not panic and not lose his composure, so he asked White calmly, did you see clearly that those ships are equipped with artillery? Yes, there are about 10 guns, about 23 ships, and the number of people can carry about 50 people, including a level 5 battleship and 2 level 6 battleships. There are a total of 26 small fleets. So many he also saw it just now, but his vision was a little blurry, and White's vision was famous for its accuracy, so he brought him here as a second observation of the ships passing by various countries. The loud gunshots just now, what kind of good intentions can this be? Okay, I know boss, do you think this is White said with some doubt? They want to occupy the north bank of the Congo River. Abel was shocked. He calmed down and suppressed his boiling mood. However, he said urgently, I will continue to supervise here. You hurried to the governor's palace in Luanda and report the news and scale of the landing of the Dutch fleet and army here. This time, it seems that we are going to be in trouble. When reporting, remember to report in detail. Yes, boss. Mark White also knew that the matter was urgent and could not be delayed any longer, so he didn't waste any words and walked quickly towards Mbanza Congo, because there, they had prepared horses. With them, they could quickly reach Luanda where the governor was. The Netherlands and the Dutch, Franco-Prussian joint fleet in the Atlantic. Lieutenant General Leon Booker, the latest news is that our small fleet has begun to land on the Congo River. Colonel Braga has led 3,000 people and advanced 20 kilometers along the Congo River. Now he is moving towards Matadi according to your instructions. Colonel Braga plans to fire a shot at the shore every 10 kilometers. He has fired 10 shells in nearly 100 kilometers of advance. Okay, very good, tell them to continue like this. Yes, Lieutenant General. As a veteran at the sea, Leon Booker has many years of experience in the Pacific and has developed experience in managing the Navy. Portugal has been operating here for many years. He absolutely does not believe that the other side will not know what is going on here. Therefore, this is a test and a threat. If Portugal dares to interfere with the actions of the Netherlands, he does not mind killing the chicken to scare the monkey. For this reason, even if the Netherlands and Portugal fight, it will not hesitate. Now, as your Majesty said, while Congo is still a no-man's land, the estuary has been blocked. With the advance of 3,000 people, the two sides of the Congo River have become garrisons for thousands of Dutch. The remaining nearly 2,000 people will go to the Congo Basin, where the Kingdom of Congo is located. There should be no problem. After all, these are warriors who have gone through life and death battles. As long as they reach Mbandaka, the capital of my Kingdom of Congo, they can open this mysterious indigenous kingdom. Now that the Congo River has been taken, it is too important for the future military of the Netherlands. Portugal will lose its unique presence here from now on. And as the Netherlands establishes strongholds and territories here, there is no doubt that France and Prussia will follow suit. By then, European countries will not be left behind. The era of European colonization of Africa will enter a period of European powers dividing territory in Africa with the opening of Pandora's box by the Netherlands. Portugal, the largest ruler of southern Africa, will be unable to resist because of this. I said, Alpha, our luck is too good. How come we have encountered such a thing? This was supposed to be a normal visit to South Africa, a front line of the war, but as the crisis of the war approached, they were eventually driven away from Cape Town and came to Angola, a Portuguese colony. They originally came to the edge of the Congo River with a slightly lost mood to relax outdoors and browse the estuary of the largest river in Africa, but they did not expect that the two of them would encounter such a thing happening in front of them. Yes, this is too amazing. Tyson also felt the same way. Seeing the troops on the river not far away and the flag of the Kingdom of the Netherlands on the warship, he felt that he was the one who was most cared for by God. Then hurry up, the headlines that are delivered to the door have been delivered to the door. This is a good opportunity for us to get a higher salary. If we don't catch it, it will be a waste. It's just a waste of God's gift. The three of them quickly reflected the fleet in the Congo River not far away and the army on the shore. The three people from the Financial Times who had been stranded in South Africa for many days finally got the explosive headlines they wanted. June 20th, 1862. A report from the Financial Times shocked the world. According to the headline of the newspaper, at 9:20 a.m. on June 15, 1862, a fleet of the Kingdom of the Netherlands suddenly appeared in the southern part of the Gulf of Guinea in Africa and landed at Banana at the mouth of the Congo River. There were more than 3,000 people, and they were heading upstream along the Congo River. The Financial Times speculated that the Netherlands was going to occupy the Congo coast as its overseas territory. With the appearance of this report, countries were suddenly in a state of excitement. Africa, the new target of the Netherlands? The Netherlands is actually starting to get involved in Africa in southern Europe? What are countries waiting for? Chapter 1, please vote for recommendation. Chapter 106, Bustling Africa. As soon as the news in the Financial Times appeared, it stunned everyone in the world, and people began to pay attention. People in other European countries protested against the actions of the Netherlands. Some protested against their own governments, which lagged behind the Netherlands in taking overseas plundering actions, which were too slow and ineffective. Some protested against the weakness of their own military. Some also protested against the fact that their own governments were too slow in obtaining intelligence information, and they even had to obtain it from the news channels of the private media to learn the truth of such a major event, which reduced their trust. In short, while all countries are now in a state of panic because of this matter, the dissatisfaction of the people is increasing their pressure. With the Financial Times, which was originally only popular in the UK, it became a multinational newspaper second only to the European Times in Europe because of this report. Its sales also stood firmly in the second place under the eye-catching sales of this issue, and it also took the most important step for the multinational newspaper giants in the next 2 centuries. Period. This made Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom laugh and cry, and she didn't know whether it was a blessing in disguise for this newspaper. At the same time, in South Africa, where there were newspapers, people who were very concerned about everything in the UK noticed this information, and the information spread throughout South Africa. This made various forces in South Africa, especially Martinus, the leader of the Transvaal, who had secretly surrendered to the Netherlands, George, the leader of the Orange Free State, and even the Crown Prince of the Zulu Kingdom, Kazihiweyo, very excited. Because they finally understood why the Netherlands wanted them to wait, and where the Netherlands' confidence came from. With the confirmation of this news, even if Lenovo was halfway across the Atlantic Ocean, the British army of 100,000 was rushing to them. They were no longer afraid, because with the landing of the Netherlands on the Congo River, the original plan mentioned by the Netherlands was really started, so their confidence rose sharply. At the same time, Jobin and Shepstone were also in a daze holding the newspaper in their hands. The whole of South Africa has now almost fallen, leaving East London and Port Elizabeth in the southeast. Because they are close to the sea, with the support of the fleet, their combined strength is concentrated in the surrounding 200 square kilometers. Did the Netherlands use its troops to support the Transvaal Republic? This was not just Jobin's question, but also raised questions in London and other countries. Since the Netherlands had extra troops to invade the Congolese indigenous kingdom, it would be bad for France and Prussia to follow the Netherlands to the south. This was a sudden thought in the minds of everyone, including Queen Victoria, and they suddenly thought of a possibility. The Netherlands was focusing everyone's attention on South Africa, and the British army was heading to South Africa, locking in a war of attrition in South Africa. but they were secretly expanding the territory of their overseas colonies. After Victoria figured this out, she was immediately furious. Unfortunately, Britain was unable to stop the other side at this time, and the reasons were not sufficient. When the next day came, she understood more clearly that Britain had no chance to stop them, and Europe's attack on Africa was a foregone conclusion. On June 15, 1862, after nearly a week of long journey, 3,000 Dutch landing troops finally arrived in Mbandaka on the same day. After 3,000 Maser rifles fired at the sky, the King of Congo finally chose to abdicate, but in order to show the generosity of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Colonel Braga took out the Dutch Viscount Award. It took less than a day before and after, and with the surrender of the King of Congo, the map of the entire Congo was described by the King of Congo and placed in front of Colonel Braga. In particular, the road from Congo to Tanzania and Kenya in the east became his most concerned, because before he came, even the Chief of Staff Mark Rudd had given a death order, which was a task that must be completed. After all, the Financial Times has limited staff, but other countries have other newspapers. June 16, 1862. Everyone was stunned, especially the Prussians. After reading it, they all laughed up to the sky, their faces full of excitement, because Prussia finally had colonies overseas. It turned out that the latest edition of the Berlin Daily published Prussia's latest garrisons in Southwest Africa, Namibia, Cameroon and Somalia. In the newspaper, there was even a government declaration in which Bismarck declared sovereignty over there and asked all countries not to infringe on the territory that belonged to Prussia. As if not to be outdone, the French newspaper Le Figaro announced that the French Empire had officially stationed more than 5,000 troops in Mauritania, Togo, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, and made it clear that sovereignty could not be violated by all countries. Even Olivier announced that they had marched south through Algeria, and with the 3 places just announced, they were about to take down Mali from the left, top and bottom. By then, the entire northwest, except for Spain's Morocco, would almost fall into the pocket of France. What is stealing and replacing? This is that the 3 countries supported southern Africa with great momentum, but they actually landed in Africa halfway. It was good, but it was in northern and central Africa. The number of troops that remained to go south was definitely different. At this moment, everyone felt as if they were fooled by the 3 countries. Especially Britain. Other countries were unwilling to accept the territory obtained by the 3 countries, so the fleets of European countries began to gather and prepare to go south to occupy territory in Africa. In addition to Britain, there were also the newly established Kingdom of Italy, the Old Kingdom of Spain and the Kingdom of Portugal, which were the countries closest to Africa. There were also Tsarist Russia, Austria, and even Nordic countries such as Denmark, Sweden, and Tsarist Russia, all of which went south. For a time, Africa was very lively. Africa also entered the colonial era. The initiator was the Netherlands led by William IV, which was nearly 10 years earlier than in history. As of June 20, 1862, the 3 countries had completely taken over their respective territories according to the original plan. However, due to insufficient troops, they pressed the pause button. However, will the other countries that have awakened let them wait for other reinforcements to continue to take over other places? What do you mean by making a feint to the east and attacking the west? What are you thinking about with such a frown? Dear. Hi, dear, why are you here? Is it not possible? I am almost dizzy with the children at home, so I handed them over to the servants. I just wanted to relax in the yard, but I didn't expect you to sit on the swing and swing alone. Can't I come out? No, 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 absolutely, you are not a slave, of course it's okay. Go on what? Huh? Oh, so that's what you are asking? Alice, isn't this the most concerned issue for Britain now? Dutch warships landed in Congo? Or was South Africa defeated by the indigenous kingdoms one after another, and felt that the British Empire was embarrassed? Yes, Georgiana, as you know, I am very serious about participating in politics and have always been very interested in it. Robert, believe me, you can realize your dream. I hope so. By the way, you just said you wanted to relax, but you didn't tell me why you looked so sad just now. It's your father, from London. Because he, like your father, feels that our marriage is not ideal, so his attitude towards me is not very friendly. Robert was suddenly sad when he heard it. His father made it clear that he was not optimistic about him, a conservative Tory nobleman, marrying the daughter of a liberal Whig judge, but the 2 of them rejected the well-intentioned reminder and got married anyway. After that, They lived a simple life in Fitzroy Square, but they were very happy. It has been 5 years since they got married in 1857. The 3 children are all growing up cute, but with more mouths to feed, the pressure of living costs will increase. Raising children is not easy, and having 3 and 5 years like him is even more difficult. Even for this reason, during this period, he also wrote articles for the Quarterly and Saturday Review to comment on foreign policy to increase his income. But he was also happy to do this, because he liked politics, and was very interested in British politics. Especially in recent years, with the Liberal Whig Party in power, his articles criticizing the Whig Party attracted a lot of attention. "He is looking for you," Robert asked. "If not you, why would he look for me?" Georgiana rolled her eyes unhappily. "He is looking for me." Sir Robert stood up suddenly, but then he sat back down, and the excitement just now suddenly returned to calmness. Robert felt embarrassed when he saw Georgiana's beautiful face, and Cecil straightened his back and said, "Okay, Georgiana, I know I care too much. You know, my father has always been an influential figure in London, and he has a wide network of contacts in the Tory party. If he can help me, then I will be able to help you in the future. I have been waiting for this day for a long time. Okay, I understand, okay? Let's go. Don't let father wait too long. It's rare for him to come here. He is teasing his grandchildren." Robert teased, "That's just right, it can make up for his past guilt as a grandfather." His full name is Robert Gascoigne Cecil. Born in 1830, Cecil is his surname. His father is the second Marquess of Salisbury. Although he is the second son, his elder brother died young, and he is the only future heir to the title. He studied at Eton College in his early years and graduated from Oxford University. He went to Australia to serve in the military for 2 years. After returning, he represented Stamford in the House of Commons in 1853. He was just a playful candidate, but he didn't expect to succeed. Later, under the operation of his father, he became the Minister of Colonial Affairs in the cabinet of Conservative Tory Prime Minister George Hamilton Gordon. However, he later withdrew because he was dissatisfied with the policies made by Disraeli as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Even the young and successful him was dissatisfied with the Whig Party's rule and the differences with the Tory Party. In the end, he chose to leave and became a free man. In the front hall, Robert's father, the second Marquess of Salisbury, was teasing his grandson, but he was thinking about his only son Cecil. Robert is now a non-partisan, but in general, he holds the Conservative Party's proposition. He voted against Jews entering the British Parliament and opposed the abolition of university religious examinations. On the other hand, he believed that the London Poor Relief Bureau had too harsh conditions for the poor. He also protested against the attempt of Gladstone, the current British Chancellor of the Exchequer, to provide charitable funding for income tax. He wrote articles on foreign policy, which were sharp and well thought out. For example, he argued that the Schleswig-Holstein issue posed a challenge to Prussia. Although his recent articles have retreated in a roundabout way, his retreat was just as elegant, which made his predecessors in the British political arena shine. Because his recent writing style tended to ask the Danes to give up their tough claims, but he did not state whether Britain would help them after Denmark gave up these claims. It was precisely because of this that many liberals regarded his arguments as a heinous crime against honor and loyalty. However, as a Conservative MP, who would care about the opinions of the Liberal Whigs? From this, it can be seen that Robert's political attributes are becoming more and more mature. It's time to give him a push. Chapter 2. Chapter 107, The Marquess of Salisbury's Test. As a member of the British Privy Council, the Marquess of Salisbury has been feeling exhausted recently. In the past few months, he has had more than 2 meetings a week. Such frequent meetings have made him, an old man in his 60s, feel exhausted. The situation in Europe is changing rapidly, and London is in constant trouble. The death of Prince Albert has dealt a huge blow to the Queen. He can clearly see that the Queen has become lazy recently. She is no longer enthusiastic about giving advice, but is forced to face difficulties. This is the mentality of the Queen when dealing with European affairs. However, such a result is frightening to the representatives of the Privy Council, because it means that the Whigs, as the ruling party, can go beyond their authority and get more authorization from the Queen when the Queen is unwilling to take charge, which puts the Tory party in a more passive position. This is also the reason why he wants to put his free son Robert to his good friend Russell. It is a good choice when the Tory party has no hope of governing. Robert likes diplomacy, and he discovered it when he was a child. His development route was also designed at the beginning. Unfortunately, because of Georgiana's affairs, the two eventually had a tense crisis in their relationship, and there was a gap between father and son. However, as Georgiana gave birth to 3 direct grandchildren in the Cecil family, she gained the recognition of the entire Cecil family. This time, it was apparently to give his son a chance, but in fact it was to ease the relationship. The purpose was naturally so that his 3 grandchildren could recognize their ancestors and return to the Cecil family to see him as their grandfather. He used to be extremely conservative and did not think that Robert could take on the responsibility at such a young age, so he was always hesitant to promote his rise in British politics. It was because he saw the young Dutch William IV stirring up trouble in Europe and understood the power of young people that he became open-minded. He didn't know why for a while, thinking of his son Robert, who was nearly 10 years older than William IV and was extremely smart since childhood, he even wondered what it would be like if his son was in the current cabinet of Downing Street, or even if he formed a cabinet and became prime minister. As soon as this idea came out, he was immediately startled, and at the same time, he was extremely moved. If a prime minister emerges from the Cecil family, then the status of the Cecil family in the UK will forever become part of the aristocratic legend in British history. If he can really become the Prime Minister of the UK, then the strength of the Cecil family will increase greatly, which is also a great boost to the development of his own family. Because of this, he urgently and directly said this problem at the beginning, and also to skip the unhappiness of the 2 people at the beginning and no longer insist on it. Robert certainly felt a sense of happiness now. It feels like a pie in the sky, and the adjective of his mood at the moment is extremely pleasant, but he soon calmed down. After these years of maturity on the edge of the political arena, he knew that if he passed his father's obvious test, the Cecil family would take out resources and fully support his chance to rise in British politics. If he wants to pass, he needs to devote 12 points of energy to deal with the next challenge. If you summarize it seriously, I think we should look at the development of things from the most basic perspective. Continue. The Marquess of Salisbury looked at Robert, and then said nothing. In this round of competition between Britain, the Netherlands, France and Prussia, the relationship came suddenly, and tensions arose inexplicably. Of course, the initial reason was naturally because we were too enthusiastic about supporting Belgium, which spread all over Europe, that the ultimate goal of our British Empire was to station troops in Belgium. What was annoying was that the Palmerston cabinet government did not refute anything, which made people feel that it was just the right thing to do, and finally brought the 3 countries together. In particular, the 3 countries actually directly announced an alliance, which made the Palmerston cabinet angry and publicly opposed it, and announced a number of counterattack strategies. Among them, the most unnecessary thing in our opinion was that the Whig cabinet actually chose to go head-to-head and form an alliance with the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Italy, and also seriously believed that supporting Austria to disintegrate Prussia's influence within the German Confederation to weaken Prussia's position in the German Confederation and achieve the effect of shaking the mountain and the tiger, so as to make Prussia retreat. But William I and Bismarck were obviously dissatisfied, so they directly ignored Britain's actions. This is the superficial relationship that caused the deterioration of the 4 countries. It has completely opened up and entered the stage of white deterioration. Needless to say, it is natural that Britain began to fall into a passive situation in Europe. On the one hand, the 3 countries are like a barrier, blocking the communication between Britain, which is based on the British Isles, and Europe, and it seems out of place overseas. In particular, the joint fleet established by the 3 countries and the establishment of the Indian Ocean are even more offensive to Britain, and finally the relationship between the 4 countries is rigid. The Netherlands has repeatedly broken through its own limits and sought the support of the Nordic power Sweden. The 2 countries have formed an alliance. France has dared to confront Britain because of the goodwill released by the 2 countries. Prussia has changed its low-key style and only seeks development first, and has come to the fore. The 3 countries cooperated vividly on Belgium, but Britain was exhausted, which eventually caused Belgium to be divided into pieces, and the territory and population lost more than 60%. It can be said that Zio, he is the one who made it, and Zio, he is the one who failed. In 1830, Palmerston, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, made the founding of Belgium a sensation around the world. Now, because of the division of the Kingdom of Belgium, he has fallen into passivity and questioned his ability to govern. It can be said that things in the world are unpredictable, and one step is a reincarnation. However, I have to marvel that Palmerston is worthy of being the most resource-efficient diplomat in Britain for hundreds of years. He finally saw the opportunity to ease the tension from the transaction between the Netherlands and Tsarist Russia, and exchanged colonies with the Netherlands. This brought instability to the relationship between the three countries and increased suspicion within the three countries, thus proving that the interests of the three countries are not monolithic, and pried open the solidified screws of the three countries. After taking a sip of Georgiana's coffee, I suddenly found that I seemed to be more energetic after drinking it. Compared with the past, the effect seems to be particularly good today. I sighed that people are in a good mood when they are happy. The effect of drinking coffee in different environments is different. However, although this is in sight, the actions of the three countries in South Africa show that the three countries are acting together overseas to break the British power that is almost monopolized by expansion. They obviously have a firm trust. The three countries want to expand, and Britain's quagmire is the biggest opportunity. Therefore, the three countries secretly support South Africa. The whole world knows. The purpose is naturally to weaken Britain's overseas strength, and even the mobile forces are trapped there because of this. Militarily speaking, Britain has almost exhausted more than 50% of its standing and mobile troops. As a result, the troops from the homeland to support other places are in urgent shortage. In this respect, I think we are in crisis. After all, if a war breaks out in other places, we will be passive in an instant. Go on, said the Marquis of Salisbury, and continued to lean back in his chair with his mouth closed. Since we are talking about the source of the deterioration of relations among the four countries, then we can see why a relationship has been maintained for so long. Robert paused, then continued confidently, the three countries are all regional powers. Yes, and the current Netherlands is also, at least I think so. I think as one of the representatives of the old British aristocracy, my father can see more clearly than any other British person that the strength of these old rivals of Britain is growing, right? The Marquis of Salisbury did not comment. Seeing this, Robert was not angry, but became more and more energetic, which really made people wonder if he was the type of person who became more courageous as the battle went on. However, this is exactly the physical condition and quality that a leader should have. The rise of Prussia in the German Confederation has threatened Austria's dominant position. Think about it, the North German Customs Union has reached 18 countries, while the South German Customs Union is Austria's means of counterattacking Prussia's plundering of influence, but unfortunately it has only 10 countries. From this, we can see that Austria can no longer suppress Prussia, which is why the Queen is willing to marry Princess Victoria to the Prussian Crown Prince Frederick, in order to win over the rising Prussia. Take advantage of the situation to grasp the lifeline of the new situation in Europe. Unfortunately, the rise of Bismarck and others prevented the Queen and Palmerston's plan. Obviously, the Prussians were not fools. They would not easily accept Britain's interference in their foreign policy and development of relations. This alliance with France and the Netherlands is the best explanation. This makes us focus on preventing Prussia from forming an alliance with the Russian Empire. It has to be said that it is an ironic response. The dispute between Britain and France has reached a bottleneck. This bottleneck is due to the development of colonial disputes in the Far East, especially in the competition for the Suez Canal in the Middle East. After France lost to us, Napoleon III was even more dissatisfied. Later, they launched an approach to support the Kingdom of Sardinia against Austria. Unfortunately, in the end, we took away their ally in the Mediterranean, which made Napoleon III feel deeply frustrated. He has even less good feelings towards Britain. However, the three countries have benefited from their actions in Africa this time. I think Napoleon III no longer needs to raise his pillow and count sheep when he can't sleep. He can sleep well for a few days. As for the Netherlands, Father, I have been observing the Netherlands, and I found that William IV of the Netherlands has been avoiding a head-on showdown with Britain. Even if he has to have a showdown, he will try to win over other countries to join in. This move is so smart and beautiful. Every time, Viscount Palmerston has to spend a lot of time conducting diplomatic activities with the three countries instead of just the Netherlands. Viscount Palmerston is now facing a smarter and much smaller opponent, but this opponent is a master who can use the opponent's strength to his advantage. That being said, Chapter 1, continue to ask for recommendation votes and monthly tickets. Thank book friends Mo Wang and choose in for the reward. Chapter 108, British Legendary Family. But how can we deal with such a relationship now, right? Yes, said the Marquis of Salisbury, not annoyed at being interrupted. Of course there is a way to deal with this relationship. Robert's eyes flashed with admiration. He said, perhaps because Viscount Palmerston understood that the Netherlands could be won over, so he chose to exchange colonies. William IV was not an ordinary person. I have to say that this king, who is younger than me, is indeed superior in tactics and strategies. William IV knows where the Netherlands' weaknesses are, and he also knows the opponent's strengths. If he is too hard for a long time, he will be under pressure, and if he is too soft, he will lose prestige. Therefore, among the three countries, he is actually the protagonist, but he is doing the leading things, but he has always been exposed as a supporting role, making a fortune in silence. He also knows that if the Kingdom of the Netherlands continues like this, it will sooner or later face a showdown from all parties, and then bear the pressure from many major powers, and even be forced to publicly express its position in the alliance of multiple major powers. However, this is not what the Netherlands ultimately hopes to see. In this case, they should have thought that it might eventually evolve into a situation that is not pleasing to all parties, or even worsens the relationship between the Netherlands and other countries. This is also what the Netherlands does not want to see. Therefore, the Netherlands has been looking for an excuse until now, an excuse for not fighting in Europe. So they chose to form an alliance with France and Prussia. The Marquess of Salisbury, who had been extremely relaxed, tensed up again. He seemed to have realized something. Yes, Robert knew that this was his biggest chance, so he no longer had any reservations. They wanted to find an excuse, that is, the Kingdom of Belgium. He used this small country as an excuse. The three countries were eager to move Belgium, and they wanted to tear off a piece of meat. They all knew that the other party had coveted Belgium for a long time. In the end, Belgium became the first country under their hands to act together, and the results were very satisfactory. At this time, he tasted the sweetness, so he pretended that he wanted to share the vast land of Africa with the other two countries. He saw this point, so he pretended that the Netherlands and the other two countries went south to occupy Africa. Of course, it is not ruled out that they have such an idea. After all, it is said that both sides of the Congo River are occupied by the Netherlands, as well as Tanzania and Madagascar Island. It is said that the Netherlands has stationed more than 2,000 East Indian soldiers in Kenya. At present, Prussia is also confronting Italy and Somalia, and it is even on the verge of breaking out. It seems that no one cares about the Netherlands and Kenya. In the end, Italy chose to withdraw. Although it wanted to go back to occupy Sudan, it was a pity that they did not want to attract the hostility of the British because the British were operating there. Unfortunately, although our British Empire occupied Egypt, Sudan was too big to support Italy. In the end, Italy could only retreat to the Red Sea and occupy Eritrea. Victor Emmanuel II, who is ambitious, would naturally not be satisfied with a small Eritrea. So he sent troops directly south from his homeland, crossed the Mediterranean into Libya, and carried out a sweep like venting. In the end, with the recognition of Britain and Austria, he occupied the whole of Libya. Italy also became the country with the sixth largest colonial area in Africa after France, the Netherlands, Prussia, Britain, and Portugal. Driven by the Netherlands, Spain also began to move south after expanding the scope of its original colony Morocco and took over the Spanish Sahara. For this reason, the West and France had a quarrel, because Spain prevented France from occupying West Africa. The goal is no longer possible. After all, Morocco and the Spanish Sahara are connected, almost occupying the coastal area of the west coast of Africa. For France's strategic goals, it has become a problem. The Russian Empire occupied Ghana in Africa for the first time, Sweden also occupied Togo, and Denmark even took over Sierra Leone. Following Prussia, Austria directly established a base in Nigeria and declared Nigeria a colony of the Austrian Empire. Many people predicted that the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia might not fight a battle on their home soil, but might warm up in Africa first. Further, whenever William IV takes the lead, he will bring a trend, and all countries in Europe will naturally follow the footsteps of the Netherlands. This is the case with Belgium and Africa. William IV always seems to be able to grasp the dark side of the European countries and open up their inner desires. Everything that happens in Africa is an unspeakable bitter disaster for Britain. The Marquess of Salisbury no longer knows what kind of mood to use to describe his excitement. Whenever he sees nervousness, his index finger will swing messily from side to side. Robert, who is familiar with him, knows that he has succeeded, and it is a super successful one. Sure enough, the chaos in Africa has seriously disrupted many of Viscount Palmerston's deployments, especially Belgium in the past few months, which has become the biggest diplomatic failure in his life. Before he began to lick his wounds, the chaos in South Africa has successfully rubbed salt into his wounds, which is extremely painful. The Marquess of Salisbury said sarcastically and sympathetically, "South Africa has not been resolved yet. Now the wave of countries seizing colonies in Africa is coming again. Britain also wants to join this wave, but when it looks back, it finds that its military strength is extremely limited." This time, the Marquess of Salisbury did not say a few words to CEO, but said, "Okay, the analysis is good, but since your analysis is that the Netherlands is hiding behind various countries but demanding a lot of benefits, then, are the big countries such as Britain, France, Prussia and Austria so easy to fool? No, father, although many people can see this idea, even if they can see it, it doesn't matter, because, for this move by William IV, it is a layout based on the interest chain of various countries. Even if they can see it, the countries are still reluctant to throw away this piece of fat meat. This is a harvest of killing two birds with one stone or even four birds. From the perspective of various countries, the Marquess of Salisbury suddenly became interested. That's it. One is what I just said. The Netherlands can open up Africa for the great powers, allowing them to plunder Africa's wealth. Father Robert looked at the Marquess of Salisbury solemnly, and said with a little excitement, "Since Africa can do it, then, can America also do it? Don't forget that Alaska and Canada are in the hands of various countries, and the Caribbean Sea is dotted with colonies of European countries, like stars in the sky, controlling the situation there, so that the United States will not dominate. This is the second. He made various countries have evil thoughts about South America, a neighbor of Africa, which they should not have. The third is that the situation in Europe was completely disrupted by the layout of the Netherlands. The balance of countries born after the Vienna Peace Conference in 1815 was completely disrupted. The layout that the British people worked hard for generations disappeared in an instant. This was also a great disaster for Britain, because from then on, Britain could no longer rely on the previous situation on the European continent to evaluate the strength of various countries and implement a balance of power when looking for allies in Europe. In the future, it would also have to take into account the gains and losses of overseas colonies, such as Africa. In short, the move made by the Netherlands has played our good cards and disrupted the situation in Europe. On the contrary, the alliance between France, the Netherlands and Prussia and the alliance between the Netherlands and Switzerland have made the Netherlands an object that no country dares to offend, and its status has risen sharply. Upon hearing this, the Marquess of Salisbury had to agree and sighed, "Yes, the Vienna Peace Conference was held by the victors, consisting of Britain, Austria, Russia, and Prussia. The four countries got the biggest benefit of standing at the back, but Prussia was just Austria's heel, and France was even the object of trial. The Netherlands was not even qualified to approach the corner of the table, and it was with the help of the Russian Empire that it became a kingdom again. The Netherlands, France, and Prussia were not the protagonists of the Vienna Peace Conference, but now they seem to have the potential to overthrow the European situation formed by Britain, Austria, and Russia and reshuffle the European sphere of influence. However, what is most incredible to the British is that, let alone Prussia, which was originally a small player among the four countries, the Russian Empire has always been a bystander, not participating in or maintaining the structure of the Vienna Peace Conference. Instead, it has repeatedly helped the Netherlands withstand the pressure from Britain. This caused dissatisfaction with Alexander II of the Russian Empire and London. Do you think that the rapid expansion of France's colonies will cause a crisis for Britain in the eastern Mediterranean? Asked the Marquess of Salisbury. No? Why? Robert shook his head and denied it. No. First of all, Napoleon III is not stupid, he understands the strength of the British Navy, and there are also many British troops in India. If you annoy your Majesty, it will be very uncomfortable for France to attack France from both sides, especially their interests in the Far East, which will fall into the hands of us Britain in an instant. Yes, today is Friday, and the day after tomorrow is Sunday. You should report to Russell. Remember to bring a gift. As for what gift, I think you can use what you just said, your views on the current British foreign policy and comments, as your token of allegiance. Robert was delighted and said, Yes, Father. Amsterdam. When William IV was recalling many past lives of Disraeli and Clayton, the two successors of the Tory and Whig parties, In an attempt to make targeted deployments, he thought of the next generation of successors of the Tory party, who is also the successor of Disraeli, the second leader of the Tory party. That person was the third-generation Marquess of Salisbury, who inherited the title in 1866. He was the British Prime Minister for nearly 14 years from 1885, but failed in one term, and the one who failed was Gladstone, who had served 2 terms as the British Prime Minister. Even after the third term of the Marquess of Salisbury was completed, the position of British Prime Minister after 1902 was taken over by his nephew Arthur Balfour, who continued the ruling position of the Tory party and further consolidated the position of the Cecil family in British politics. The Tory party, a Liberal party, was controlled by the Cecil family for more than 30 years. Should the Netherlands make long-term investments in such a family? I just don't know if they will accept it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Unlucky Italy. The incident was completely beyond the expectations of the outside world. Britain did not participate in this wave and did not express any opinions. This increased people's imagination. Is Britain really so weak because of South Africa that it is difficult to withdraw troops to participate in the hunting of Africa? Or is it operating a possible energy conspiracy? In this collective hunting of African countries by European countries, the Netherlands actually maintained an amazing tacit understanding with France and Prussia, and actually issued a joint statement, which even made people think that the statement was actually said to the world's largest maritime and economic power, and it also hit the key points of various countries, which won the support of various countries and made Britain's position more embarrassing. It turned out that on July 1, 1862, France, the Netherlands, and Prussia held a meeting at the level of foreign ministers in Rotterdam, a southern city in the Netherlands, and finally issued a joint invitation letter to all countries, asking them to come to Rotterdam on October 1 to jointly discuss the status of Africa and the power of various countries there. As soon as this statement came out, people even had an idea. Isn't it said that Africa has not been hunted yet? Why did they suddenly propose a sphere of influence? In addition, Britain does not seem to be among the founding countries in the negotiation. If they do not participate, will the power status of each country be recognized? Downing Street, UK. Mr. Prime Minister, I think we are too indulgent to the Netherlands and other 3 countries. Take Belgium as an example. We have made a lot of concessions. We know that the 3 countries are supporting South Africa behind the scenes in fighting against us as agents, but we pretend not to know and fall into the trap. This time, the division of Africa has left our British Empire behind and directly promoted the development of the situation in Europe. Should we intervene? After all, the Empire's interests in North Africa and South Africa are so huge. Now, I have a feeling that the Empire is being cut by various countries in Africa, and it seems that we are slowly surpassed by various countries there. After Gladstone failed to compete with Disraeli for the successor of the Tory party in 1857, he directly jumped to the Whig party, which had similar ideas to him for many years, and became the successor of Viscount Palmerston and Russell. He began to stand out in British politics and became the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the current British cabinet, the third person in the British ruling party, and the opponent of Disraeli, who was defeated before. However, the battlefield has changed from the Tory party to the Tory and Whig election war, and the game is based on the interests of Britain and the world. Therefore, he is now highly valued by Viscount Palmerston and has become the right-hand man of the elderly Viscount Palmerston. He even became the manager of many cabinet affairs. Although he used to advocate external expansion as a criminal act and an immoral practice, when he became a member of the cabinet and was appointed as the Secretary of State for Colonial Affairs, he felt that Britain still needed to occasionally adhere to this policy to develop Britain's diplomatic game. So he acquiesced to Britain's colonial policy. Recently, after watching the actions of the Netherlands and other countries, he has changed his view. Britain can no longer be immune to the situation. Britain should continue to expand the scope of its colonies. Because he is so proud, he naturally does not think that losing to other countries will be a manifestation of Britain's strength. He who has managed colonial affairs deeply understands that Africa has been severely damaged by the ravages of European countries, and has also highlighted the arrogance of various countries. In his opinion, the alliance of France, Ireland and the Netherlands, which is the initiator, has threatened Britain's position and interests in that place. As the Prime Minister, Viscount Palmerston certainly knows some inside stories that others don't know, and some things that everyone knows. Gladstone's attitude towards Ireland is still very friendly, because his grandfather is of Irish descent, and it is said that his grandfather is also a local leader. This has also caused Gladstone to gain the support of the Irish in Britain, which has become one of his advantages. This is also the reason why Palmerston supports him, because the persecution suffered by Ireland in recent years needs a strong leader to appease their fragile hearts and make them feel that their own people are managing Britain. All Irish people calmed down and accepted the fate of being ruled by England for decades. When you find yourself surrounded by these hungry wolves, you don't need to run away, but to fight, because this way you can use your energy to save yourself, instead of wasting it on running, which is useless. Wolves are social animals, and you can't run away from them. The problem that Britain is facing now is similar to that of a person who encounters a pack of wolves. Britain is known as the world's most powerful industrial and naval power, and it also has the most overseas colonies in the world. Its existence itself is envied by all countries in the world, and it also seduces other countries' jealous eyes towards it. Now that the emerging powers in the world are rapidly rising in industrialization, we need to use special methods to maintain Britain's status. Our predecessors have done a good job. And now we are facing such a situation. We should be more sociable and become a wolf in the wolf pack, rather than the person who encounters the wolf pack. After all, under the siege of wolves, no matter how many hunting rifles you have, you will be dragged to death and exhausted by them. Only by becoming one of them can you seek what you want, start a battle for the position of leader of the wolf pack, and disintegrate them from within. Therefore, since France, the Netherlands and other countries are competing with Britain in Africa, and although this struggle occasionally involves the interests of Britain, it is undeniable that Britain seems to have suffered a loss, but it has laid the groundwork for the contradictions among countries in the competition for Africa. Why not let them continue the internal fighting among wolves for prey in Africa? But Prime Minister, I'm afraid they can't fight. Gladstone is now 54 years old, not even old enough for him. His increasingly stable political style makes Viscount Palmerston more and more appreciative. I'm afraid they just take the money and do nothing, they're all acting. But, aren't we turning a blind eye? Viscount Palmerston looked so wise that Gladstone was speechless. In this regard, he was very impressed by Viscount Palmerston's calmness. Britain has suffered countless casualties in South Africa, and the domestic situation has been criticizing the cabinet one wave after another. If it were him, he would have been restless a long time ago, but Viscount Palmerston looked calm. The difference in psychological quality is really huge, so it's impossible not to admire him. In fact, he also felt that he seemed to be making a fuss. Britain had been developing for hundreds of years. That time, it was not to resolve the opponent's move in such a situation. Britain grew up in such a chaotic world. Today, Britain is still the largest country. It has not changed. What has changed is that the countries have obtained a piece of land in that desolate place in Africa. Strength is still not affected much. However, it is a fact that the countries are fighting there, but it is also a fact that they have seized territory. It has indeed narrowed the scope of Britain's colonies in the world. However, will they really fight each other? However, at present, Britain needs to deal with the situation in South Africa as soon as possible, which is the most urgent. However, is this really what they think? On July 20, 1862, when the colonies of African countries continued to be ranked in the Baltic Sea, the exercise plan agreed upon by the Netherlands and Tsarist Russia was launched. The Netherlands dispatched the first-class sailing battleship Rotterdam, and there were also 4 second-class sailing battleships and 10 third- and fourth-class sailing battleships in the joint exercise. The Russian Empire dispatched the first-class sailing battleship St. Petersburg, and also sent more than 10 other battleships. In addition, surprisingly, Sweden also sent its only first-class sailing battleship Karl, in conjunction with 2 third-class battleships, to participate in the exercise. Other countries such as France, Prussia, Denmark, etc. have sent observers, and even the United Kingdom has recently been invited to become one of the observers. The exercise started in the Baltic Sea. Driving away pirates, surface search and rescue, encountering strong enemies and resistance, rushing to support the front line from a long distance, and coordinating and unifying the command of multinational ships, as well as how to quickly and reasonably use the warships of various countries, etc. The exercise finally ended in the North Sea, and the time span has reached July 20th, 1862. At this time, the African colonies have come to an end, and the territories occupied by various countries have basically been stabilized. However, only in the northern part of East Africa, after Italy was occupied by Prussia and Somalia, they were unwilling to occupy other places, so they returned to the Red Sea and finally set their sights on the vast land of Ethiopia and Eritrea in East Africa. But this time Italy was destined to be careless. They did not expect that the rulers in Ethiopia would be so popular. The attack of 10,000 people in Italy was resisted, and the guns in Ethiopia were also common in Europe. This was obviously supported by some countries in Europe, and the most likely one was Prussia. Italy was also unlucky, because Prussia was decided by Bismarck and William I to support the Kingdom of Ethiopia and become Prussia's ally there. After cultivating the other party into Prussian ally, it was used to prevent the stumbling block of Britain's southward movement there. This was what they learned from the current situation in South Africa. It can be used to consume the strength of other countries. Unexpectedly, Britain, which had always been thought to be, had not taken the bait, but Italy fell into the trap first. This made Bismarck and William I helpless. Could it be that they could be blamed? Is the Kingdom of Italy unlucky? P.S. Thank you for your support from Jenga for 1,500 points, Maoang and Chuksan for 100 points. I will continue to ask for votes and rewards from all the book friends. Chapter 110 The Future Great Painter Van Gogh. 1862. Small boats, big scenery. The best way to appreciate the charm of Amsterdam on the water is by boat cruise. No wonder all the people living in the palace in the world feel like they have just escaped from a cage when they walk out of the palace. The air outside is still fresher. Today, William IV took a rare break from his busy schedule and walked out of the Dutch royal palace to take a short trip to Amsterdam. Bill Charley, the director of Dutch Royal Intelligence, accompanied him, and several hidden personal guards. Bill Charley also accompanied His Majesty the King out of the palace, and his face showed a rare comfortable expression. Your Majesty, if you come to the Netherlands and don't come to Amsterdam to take a small boat and wander around the major canals, then your trip would be in vain. William IV laughed. Is there such a saying? Well, there are countless writers and poets from various European countries who come here every year, and they all admire the canal zone in the Netherlands. You should know that our canal zone in Amsterdam has a history of more than 300 years. It has developed into a 75-kilometer-long canal network connecting more than 100 small islands, consisting of more than 160 canals and 1,281 bridges. It is a well-deserved water city. Be careful that the Venetians, who used to belong to the Austrian Empire and now belong to Italy, hear this title, or they will scold you. Your Majesty, our structure is different from theirs, and the construction structure was different back then. We take the current central railway station in Amsterdam as the center of the circle, and spread out through the arc-shaped single, Herengracht, Emperor's Canal, Prince's Canal and the outermost single canal. Its main attractions are concentrated in the canal belt with a radius of about 1.5 kilometers now. People from all over the world, especially from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and even the Russian Empire, Prussia, Belgium, France, etc. in Northern Europe, will come to Amsterdam for water sightseeing and appreciate the charm of Amsterdam on the water. Most of them will choose the best way, that is, to take a canal sightseeing boat. Through the glass top and glass windows of the boat, they can appreciate the 17th-century gabled buildings on both sides of the canal. Almost everyone will be surprised by their colorful, various shapes, gorgeous and historical vicissitudes after sightseeing. Looking at the crowded streets of Amsterdam, and the pride on people's faces, it seems that at this moment, I feel that being a king, in addition to hegemony, there are many other things to do. For example, developing the economy, improving people's lives, and converting military technology to civilian technology to improve the competitiveness of Dutch civilian technology in the world. The Netherlands can do more in this regard. Many of the street floors in Amsterdam at that time were made of cut stone slabs. Unlike the street markets in the Far East, here in Amsterdam, shops were the mainstream. Silk and ceramics were occasionally available, but there were more glass products and other European industrial products. For example, the latest rubber products from the Netherlands, celluloid wash basins, celluloid buckets, and other series of celluloid finished products were the most popular on the entire street. The scale of plastic has developed so large. Sir, you don't sound like you are from another place. You don't even know that celluloid has become a part of our daily life? Are you from another place? But from what you said just now, you don't sound like you are from another place. By the way, I heard that many people immigrated to the United States and North America, which is at war in recent years. You didn't escape back from North America because of the war. Vincent, don't meddle in other people's affairs. Have you forgotten that you came with me today to purchase goods and take them back to the center of Zundert City to sell them? How can this old man Sykes talk like that? What are you selling? Such a tiring thing, only you old guy can think of it. I won't do such a tiring job. What caught William Ivy's eyes was an old man Sykes in his 60s and a little boy about 10 years old named Vincent. The boy who asked him just now was handsome and his eyes were full of agility. When he looked around, his eyes were bright and focused, but when he looked at other places, his eyes were like moving dice, very clever. This is a sensible but restless child. As for the old man, William Ivy narrowed his eyes slightly, because he saw that he was different from ordinary old people. He had a sense of vicissitudes after experiencing many tortures. There must be a lot of stories behind this man. This was William Ivy's first feeling. Bill Charlie behind him warned him in his ear, "Master, I feel the evil spirit from that old man. He should have been a soldier before, and even the kind who has killed countless souls with his gun. Do you want to call someone?" "No need," William Ivy stopped him. "Sir, you have been looking at these celluloid products for a long time. Do you want to buy them or not? If you don't, I can pack them all up and take them back to Zundert. There are people who need them there." William Ivy did not answer directly, but asked with interest, "If I buy all the celluloid products here, will you make a wasted trip? After all, the distance between the two places will take you almost a day to go back and forth." Vincent said to William Ivy with dissatisfaction, "Sir, you are deliberately making things difficult for me. However, there are so many plastic products on this street, you can't buy them all." "Do you really think so?" William Ivy did not say anything, but Bill Charlie next to him walked to the owner of the store and whispered something in his ear. The boss came over nervously, performed the etiquette of facing a noble to William Ivy, and then said to Vincent and the 60-year-old man, "You two, I would sell these celluloid products to you without the consent of this gentleman. Please forgive me." Hearing this, Vincent and the old man's face changed, and they looked at the smiling William Ivy and the straight Bill Charlie beside him with fear. "Look," I said, "if you don't answer me, you will come in vain. You should believe it now, right?" William Ivy said sincerely, but the threat revealed by this meaning did not weaken at all. On the contrary, because of his smile, Vincent and the others felt a little pressure, but it was the momentum brought by the superior. Sykes bent his waist a little. He was old, and he knew that the person in front of him should not be offended. He casually pulled Vincent beside him, and said with a kind face, "I don't know what this gentleman is asking." Although Vincent was dissatisfied, he did not refute. Although he was small, he was smart and understood the importance of judging the situation. Bill Charlie heaved a sigh of relief with a tense face, but he stood between William Ivy and the two men, in order to prevent the two men from accidentally offending him, so that he could block them in time. "Just now, you said that you will not sell these finished products yourself. I am curious, what are you going to do with them?" Vincent showed a child's unique smile and said, "To sell them yourself, you naturally need a store. The store fee is so expensive. We also need to spend a sum of money to buy them. However, there are few stores in Zundert City, and every inch of land is worth a lot of money. We are taking too much risk. And the other small stores have too little turnover. I think you should not be an ordinary person. You know that when you open a store, you will often encounter some hooligans who ask for protection fees and pay taxes to the government." William Ivy said indifferently, "As a citizen, isn't it normal to pay taxes to the government? But we are just a small business." "So you think?" William Ivy suddenly became interested in the child in front of him. A child of about 10 years old actually understood these things. His family is either an extraordinary family, or an ordinary family, then this child is a business genius. For a genius, William Ivy, who was only 22 years old, would not think that it would be confusing if he took action to cultivate the other party. He guessed some of the kid's next thoughts, but if he really thought so, then William Ivy felt that this kid named Vincent was smart enough to be cultivated by him. Vincent paused. "After that, you really won't interfere with us anymore?" "Of course," William Ivy said affirmatively, "but it depends on whether you are satisfied with your answer." "Still satisfied?" Vincent's face darkened, and he didn't dare to vent his dissatisfaction to William IV and the others, so he changed his target to the old man Sykes. In fact, my purpose is to buy goods from here at a low price, and then take them back to Zundert City to sell them in bulk at a high price. The old man Sykes suddenly said, Vincent, didn't you say that you wanted me to accompany you to buy goods, and then take them back to set up stalls and rent stores to sell them yourself? Vincent said proudly, I'm not lying to you. Why are you willing to accompany me all the way to this wholesale street in Amsterdam? You Sykes's beard and hair almost stood up in anger. William IV looked at this combination with amusement, especially the kid. They will definitely receive your goods by then? Aren't you afraid that they will go back on their word? Of course not, Vincent said confidently, because before I came, I have already received a deposit of 30% of the total price from them. If they go back on their word, all their deposit will be mine. I'm so mad, Vincent. All the money you took on the road was mine. Even the train ticket was a round-trip ticket bought for you because you cried poor to me. I didn't expect you to take a large deposit yourself. In fact, an old man. This is what you owe our family. This is just a small part of the repayment. Hearing this, Sexton shut up immediately, fearing that Vincent would say something unpleasant again, so he chose to stare and keep silent. William IV looked at Sykes meaningfully, and then asked, well, it's good to get a deposit, not to mention that it's 30%. But how do you know that the price here will be lower than the price in Zundert City, or that you can make a lot of money after deducting your shipping costs? After saying that, not only William IV, but also Sykes and Bill Charlie beside him looked at him curiously. No one will ever feel that making money is redundant, and listening to people who make a lot of money talk about methods is what people like most. After what they said just now, the 10-year-old boy in front of them has made these people associate him with making money, but the other two are for making money, while William IV is concerned about the potential of this child. Vincent, I say, Sykes, you old man forgot that there is a price list of celluloid products in the newspaper Holland Business Daily that you gave me on July 20th. This pair, don't you know whether it makes money or not? Sykes' face suddenly changed when he heard this, and he smiled bitterly. Bill Charlie looked at the boy seriously. He knew that the boy had quite the eye of King William IV from now on. It was no exaggeration to say that he had a promising future. William IV sighed that genius also manifests itself according to the actual situation. Charlie, this little boy is very smart. I think you should take him in. Take me in? Looking at the strong figure of Bill Charlie in front of him, although he was young, he also knew the dirty things in some European churches. He shuddered a little, so he was about to refuse, but found that the sir had gone far away. Seeing Bill Charlie coming over, he was about to refuse. My name is Bill Charlie, a member of the Dutch Privy Council, and my position is the Director of Royal Netherlands Intelligence. The one just now was our Dutch King William IV, you also heard it. His Majesty is very optimistic about you and thinks you are a good seedling, so he wants to focus on training you and asked me to accept you as an apprentice. Privy Council? What organization is this? Director of Royal Netherlands Intelligence? Is this position very high? And the one just now was actually our Dutch king, is he great? And accept me as an apprentice? What benefits will I get? With a series of questions, Bill Charlie suddenly had the urge to curse. What is the connection? Compared to this, the first apprentice Jules Danadin was better. However, just like Danadang did in the past, he had to do His Majesty's orders seriously. Perhaps, this kid really has talents that I don't know about and that are seen by your Majesty but I don't know about. Thinking of this, Bill Charlie quickly made a decision, so he popularized these knowledge to the other party. However, when Bill Charlie lowered his head, Sykes, who was next to him, had changed his expression. When he finished his story, he smiled at Sykes and said, please send him back, old man, Vincent. I will go to Zundert City for business in a while, and I will find you there. During this period, you must study hard, don't embarrass me and your senior brother, and don't disappoint His Majesty William. Senior brother? Teacher, I don't know if my senior brother is. Vincent wanted to ask how the senior brother was doing. If he was not good, then this time he would lose a lot of money. Although he was shocked by the name explained by the other party just now, he recognized this teacher and regretted it now. Sykes also looked at Bill Charlie with interest. Your senior brother. Charlie said proudly, he is now the Prime Minister of Belgium. You should have heard of him. His name is Jules Danadin. It's him. It's actually him. Vincent's heart almost jumped out of his chest, and then he hurriedly said in a flattering manner, "Teacher, my full name is Van Gogh William Vincent. Remember, I only tell it to my close people. Only you, as close as you, can call me Van Gogh. What about me?" Hearing this, the three turned around and found that William IV was staring at Vincent with sparkling eyes. No, the little boy who should be called Van Gogh at this moment. William IV sighed secretly. It turned out to be the pioneer of post-impressionism and expressionism in European painting, the great Dutch painter Van Gogh. I came out this time. It seems I have picked up a treasure. P.S. The last 500 words are not included in the previous 4,000 words, and are not counted as subscriptions. Thanks to Shyamahage1 for 500 points, Bookfriend 202010131842581994 for 700 points, and Shilingjgufang for 100 points, as well as your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Please also collect it if you haven't collected it. This book has been updated for more than 50 consecutive days and keeps updating. Please continue to support. Chapter 111, The Rise of Dutch Industry Inspired by Billiards. Having conquered a future master of Dutch painting, William IV felt particularly happy. He went shopping on the street and found that life seemed even more interesting. "Charlie, what is the production of celluloid? Currently, we have started to export after meeting domestic demand. What do you think will be the reaction of other countries if we completely cut off the supply? In that case, other countries may launch corresponding sanctions against the Netherlands. For example, Sweden may cut off its iron ore supply, and Prussia may even impose additional taxes on products that pass through Prussia and Austria on our export routes." Really? What if we reduce exports? If that's the case, I think there will be less resistance from other countries, but they will also lose trust in the Netherlands. Celluloid is now widely used in various countries. If that country finds it difficult to develop it, perhaps other countries will jointly develop it and share patents. At that time, the Netherlands will lose more than it gains, and it will. It will offend everyone and get no benefits, right? Yes, Your Majesty. It seems that the only way to make quick money is to win more markets as soon as possible. Only in this way can we quickly occupy the market and make others have no motivation to develop. William IV heard this, and although he disagreed, he also admitted that this was the best way to deal with it at present. Celluloid, also known as marble film, is the name of a synthetic resin. It is the oldest thermoplastic resin in the world. It is synthesized from raw materials such as nitrocellulose and camphor. It is mainly used to make statues such as dolls. Because it can be easily formed, it is developed as a substitute for ivory. It is the ancestor of plastic. It was discovered by Schönbein of the University of Basel in Switzerland in 1846. At that time, it was only used as a substitute for shellac. People who love sports know billiards. In the mid-19th century, billiards was an entertainment activity for the rich and powerful all over the world. However, with its popularity, it has become very popular in Europe and even America. Before 1857, billiards were made of ivory, which looked very elegant. However, as the number of elephants in Africa became less and less, the Netherlands, like other countries, could not get elephant ivory to make billiards. This worried the owner of the billiards factory. The billiards market in the Netherlands is very large. It is almost a sport participated by all nobles and wealthy people. It has also become a social place for these people to chat and talk about everything. Ordinary people are also proud to be able to participate. William IV happened to see such a piece of news in the Dutch Business Daily. Compared with later generations, billiards has a much larger audience. Without other forms of entertainment, it has become the sport with the most people participating in European countries. So, he had an idea in his mind. In early 1857, he used the reputation of the Ministry of Industry to make an advertisement in major newspapers in the Netherlands and European countries, announcing that whoever could invent a material to replace ivory for billiards would be able to obtain 250,000 Dutch guilders, converted to £10,000. It caused a sensation in Europe at the time. This was not a small amount of money at the time. You know, the price of building a 6th-level sailing battleship is just this price. The Netherlands uses a 6th-level sailing battleship to exchange for a material? No matter how the countries look at it, they all think there is something strange about it. At the same time, the action of the Dutch government and William IV at that time was full of more doubts. Is this a technical expert who doesn't like politics but only loves technology? William IV, who heard this discussion, didn't care at all. After 1 week of advertising, there is a saying that a big reward will always bring courage, which is not completely true, but it is indeed a bit stimulating. In October 1857, in Rotterdam, the second largest city in the Netherlands, there was a man named John, who was originally a printer, but was also interested in billiards. So he thought hard day and night to invent a new material to replace ivory for billiards. At first, he added natural resin shellac to sawdust, which made the sawdust lumps and rolled them into balls. It looked like ivory billiards, but it would break at the touch. In the following months, he tried many things, but he couldn't find a material that was both hard and not easy to break. Hard work pays off. One day, he found that nitrocellulose, the raw material for making gunpowder, could form a transparent and strong film after being dissolved in alcohol and applied to objects. He wanted to condense this film into a ball, but failed again and again in the experiment. John was an indomitable man. He was not discouraged and continued to explore as always. Finally, in October 1858, he found that when camphor was added to nitrocellulose, nitrocellulose turned into a material with good flexibility and not brittle. It can be made into products of various shapes under hot pressing, and can really be used to make billiard balls. He named it celluloid, also known as marble film. He registered a patent with the newly established patent office in the Netherlands, received 250,000 Dutch guilders, and was appointed as the ministerial advisor of the Dutch Ministry of Industry. At the same time, he was also envied by the financing of the William Group, established by Crown Prince William of the Netherlands in 1857. With the support of the group, he was ready to use his invention to gain more benefits. In 1859, he established a factory in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, to produce celluloid. In addition to producing billiard balls, it was also used as windshields for carriages. Celluloid was renamed plastic, thus creating a precedent for the plastic industry. On May 10, 1860, William Group also began to use plastic patents to produce fake ivory and billiard balls. In October of the same year, plastics were used to make boxes, buttons, rulers, table tennis balls, glasses frames, etc. At the end of the same year, European countries began to follow the Dutch merchants to bring goods, and plastic products began to prevail in Europe and America, quickly occupying the global market. The Netherlands has thus established its position as the most advanced country in the field of plastics industry. It is precisely because of the plastics industry that the GDP of the Netherlands has grown rapidly in recent years, and its per capita GDP is comparable to that of the largest developed country, the United Kingdom. The market in the Far East is so huge and the journey is so long. Your Majesty, our transportation is difficult to continue. What do you think? Then let's build a large plastic factory in Jakarta, East India. It is close to the huge market and the rubber production base, killing two birds with one stone. William IV said, the plastic industry is the most advanced industry in the Netherlands. The current product is just one of the few small uses of plastic. Plastic is more useful. Therefore, William Group's current investment is too cautious and should increase its research and development efforts. And the Falcon plan should be carried out globally. I have a list with approximate addresses and names on it. The Royal Netherlands Intelligence and the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency will work together to poach the people above. Remember, if these people cannot become talents for the Netherlands, then they will never become the Netherlands' future opponents. Unlike the streets in the Eastern world, the mainstream in Amsterdam is still shops. However, on the streets of Amsterdam, the people here are more diverse. It is not that there are fewer people in the downtown areas of eastern cities. More importantly, if you have never been to Amsterdam, you will never imagine how charming Amsterdam is. As a person of later generations, William IV never thought that a city could be so beautiful at that time. Charlie, in the Netherlands, which city can compare to Amsterdam? William IV asked Charlie, who was sitting next to him while drinking the rough juice brought by the owner in the beverage store. Aragon hadn't started to answer yet, but the owner of the small store got there first. This gentleman asked a good question, and the accent sounded like Amsterdam. He must have rarely been out since he came here. I don't know what his answer was, but I know that there are two places that are not worse than here. Aragon hadn't started to answer yet, but the owner got there first. 2. William IV became interested. Which two? This is not like the typical Dutch character. Southern Europeans are passionate, optimistic, and unrestrained. The British are reserved, the Prussians are old-fashioned, and the Dutch are practical and generally don't ask about other people's private affairs. Now, This person is intervening like this. Authentic Dutch people rarely take the initiative. This man is obviously Dutch, but his personality is more like that of a Latino who grew up in the United States or Southern Europe. The Hague is such an emerging city on the coast of the Netherlands that you will fall in love with once you meet it. The boss said, and then, as if afraid that William IV would not believe it, he explained, "The Hague is really beautiful. Life in the Hague is leisurely and real, not dreamy but peaceful. I especially like to see the afterglow of the sunset there sprinkled on every corner of the city like water drops. Watching the whole city gradually darken, I prefer to get up early and go to the small restaurants on the street. From breakfast to lunch and even supper, I eat hot chocolate and various kinds of bread all day, chat with the enthusiastic neighbors, and take their joy for myself. I also like to walk tirelessly along the low-lying fields, greenlands and rivers of The Hague with my luggage on my back. Every time I go there, I remember every smiling face around me deeply, because they are so sincere. Therefore, it is considered by everyone to be the best place to live in the Netherlands for rich people." Speaking of this, the smile on the boss's face became even bigger. From the tone of your speech just now, it has a very literary flavor. However, boss, you described The Hague so vividly. I am curious, which city do you think is the second city? It is worth putting it before Amsterdam and The Hague. Don't let it live up to its reputation. In addition to the two of them, there are other guests within a 100-meter radius. Among them, the one who asked the question just now was a middle-aged guest less than 10 meters away from him. William IV looked over, and the other party smiled and nodded to him after seeing him. William IV and Charles also became interested. Amsterdam's Canal Belt, ancient buildings and boat tours only won the third place. As for the second place, The Hague, William IV wanted to enjoy the second place recently. As for the first place, there is such a beautiful place in the Netherlands. How could he not know it? So he looked at Charlie next to him, and Charlie shrugged, indicating that he couldn't guess the answer. Chapter 1. Thanks to the reward from the book friend Fan or Zishiren. There is another chapter, in the code. Chapter 112 Great Changes in South Africa. I have lived there for more than 5 years. Life there is like returning to nature. There is no smell of money, only a strong suffocating self-cultivation, plus the bizarre life there. Really, I feel like I am not on this planet when I am there. Is it as good as you say? Another boy who was only 15 or 16 years old said to the classmate who asked the question just now, looking at William IV, "In my opinion, Rotterdam is the most beautiful. Think about it, the many landforms of Rotterdam and its location, plus the cultural environment, this beauty. First of all, I just came back from New York, USA. In the impression of these days when my father and I traveled around the Netherlands, Rotterdam is a very suitable city for survival and a very suitable city for walking in the city. Walking in the old town of Rotterdam, even people who don't understand art at all can feel the rich cultural atmosphere there. If everyone can walk slowly and look carefully, there are travelers like me who enjoy browsing the city of Rotterdam. On a beautiful afternoon in the sun, in an open-air cafe on the street, watching the locals and the tourists talking with broken Dutch and gestures, I felt the locals' heartfelt sense of mission to let tourists know about Rotterdam's history. The man said this, and then changed his tone and said, especially, I found that although the painters there have some Parisian veins, they also have their own innovations. I think Rotterdam is the most beautiful. Here, in addition to the boss, William IV and Charles, several other people also joined the debate. William IV saw these people arguing about the ranking of the most beautiful cities in the Netherlands, and he felt funny, but he did not participate. In his opinion, the Netherlands is the most beautiful. As for these cities, they are all petals of so many beautiful flowers in the Netherlands, and they are just a part of the whole. No one came up with a conclusion, and William IV interrupted the conversation of several people directly. When several people were about to be dissatisfied, they saw William IV sticking his mouth to the boss. Now, several people were embarrassed, because they had been arguing for a long time, but the final answer was not announced yet. The boss seemed to have been waiting for this moment. Just like announcing the winner of the grand prize, the boss said mysteriously, I think the most beautiful city in the Netherlands should be Honolulu on Oahu Island in the Hawaiian Islands. That is the most beautiful place in the Netherlands. William IV, who originally didn't care, was stunned. He didn't expect that the boss would actually talk about that place. After looking at the boss meaningfully, he took Charlie and left after paying the money. Honolulu, is it so famous? And why did the man who obviously came back from the United States change his face? What is the identity of the middle-aged man? Charlie observed the expressions of the people. After he made a few gestures around, a man who was no different from ordinary people suddenly came in front of the two of them. Charlie talked to the man in his ear for a while, and the latter left quickly. Your Majesty, the boss and the middle-aged man are both overseas Chinese who have just returned to the Netherlands from the United States. The middle-aged man is an American businessman, Thomas Seth, who specializes in reselling goods to make a profit. The young man is his nephew, named Thomas Alva Edison, and is now the founder of a small newspaper in the United States, the Herald. He followed his uncle back to the Netherlands from Michigan to visit his relatives. It is said that their family brought the young man to the Netherlands to seek refuge. Everyone has finally realized that the war in the United States is unlikely to end in the near future. What's his name? William Ivy looked at Bill Charlie in disbelief. The latter didn't understand why William Ivy's face changed so much in many years. Thomas Seth, not the middle-aged man. I'm asking about the name of the young man behind him. William Ivy stared at Bill Charlie closely, fearing that he would say a different name from just now. How could William Ivy not change color? If it was him, and he had the same achievements, then the Netherlands would have really made a fortune. And this time he seemed to be recognized by God. He had unexpected big gains one after another. In particular, if he was that person, then the gains from this trip would be enough to save the Netherlands 10 years of hard work in the future. Even in the next 200 years, the Netherlands would be one of the strongest industrial powers in the world. However, everything would start with whether that young man was the future Dutch technology giant. Bill Charlie didn't want to disappoint William Ivy, but he was afraid that what he said would be different from what His Majesty thought. Thomas Alva Edison. Yes, William Ivy said excitedly. Ask someone to introduce that middle-aged man to the William Group, and that young man to the R&D department, but don't have any problems with loyalty, you understand. Bill Charlie nodded in response, and then left quickly. William Ivy thought to himself, now, the rise of the Dutch Industrial Revolution has added another giant. As long as Edison in this life is not a waste, the development of the Dutch electrical industry in the world will crush all countries. Even Britain, which has the most powerful industry today, will be trampled under the feet of the Netherlands. They will avenge their previous hatred and take back what the Netherlands has taken away from Britain. It started on July 5, 1862. The colonies in Africa continued. This wave eventually defeated Britain's desire to eliminate the other side for a period of time, and then continued to go north to eliminate the Transvaal Republic, etc., so that South Africa, which is extremely important in strategic position, will be completely returned to Britain. The 100,000 British troops who landed in South Africa kicked off the beginning of the Annihilation War with the Zulu Kingdom. People originally thought it would end soon, but the Zulu Kingdom seemed to be assisted by God, with full guns and cannons, while Britain was blocked in the outer layer, even with the cooperation of warships at sea. These 100,000 troops seemed to be as brave as the previous army all over the world, but they were lying here, which was aggrieved. So it was maintained like this, and there was no progress for half a month. At this time, the Transvaal Republic had an internal fission. Martinus, the leader of the Transvaal Republic, announced on July 28, 1862 that he would step down as the leader of the Transvaal Republic, and at the same time announced that 300,000 Dutch people would follow him to withdraw from the Transvaal Republic. After years of fighting with Britain, they would all return to the embrace of the great kingdom of the Netherlands and migrate to the Congo River Basin, the new overseas territory of the Netherlands, to assist the Netherlands in developing there. George Nash, the leader of the Orange Free State, also announced on the same day that he would lead 100,000 Orange Dutch people to evacuate all of South Africa and migrate to the new overseas territories of the Netherlands, Tanzania and Kenya. The Netherlands actually took down 400,000 fierce Dutch people in South Africa without saying a word. And they were all 400,000 people with extremely strong fighting power and beat the British. Countries around the world were speechless at this moment. Chapter 113. Are the 100,000 British troops in South Africa going to be thawed? Many British people were stunned at this moment, and then they were full of surprise. Even the most calm Viscount Palmerston and the British Queens were full of gratitude to William Ivy of the Netherlands at this moment. Britain's face was finally saved. With the departure of almost all Dutch people in the Transvaal Republic and the Orange Free State Republic, Britain would sweep across the Zulu Kingdom. At that time, Britain had freed up 100,000 troops. Would the situation in Africa still be quiet? At this moment, leaders of European countries were secretly cursing the Netherlands. In this way, the Netherlands actually helped Britain. Because 100,000 British troops can finally get out of the predicament in South Africa, the colonies of various countries in Africa will face a strong opponent. Those countries that have not yet started to participate, such as the North American power United States and the South American power Argentina, are dissatisfied with the Netherlands' move. But what they don't know is that, in fact, this is all related to a meeting 2 days ago. July 24, 1862, London. Robert Cecil was shocked when he heard Mike Davis' words. Oh no. Looking at the Dutch ambassador to the UK, he knew that this man definitely understood the tense situation in the UK. He looked at the calm British Foreign Secretary Russell next to him nervously and admired him. He is indeed a former Prime Minister. He is now the assistant of Foreign Secretary Russell. The Dutch ambassador Mike Davis was summoned by Russell, the Foreign Secretary, at the British Foreign Office. Russell was silent for a while before saying, "Hey, Davis, although our two countries are not happy recently, I have to say that you are too much. My God, there are so many armed personnel in South Africa. What do you want to do? In addition to you Dutch people, the rest only occupy about 20% of the population. The Dutch must leave South Africa. We ask them to leave immediately." Davis tilted his head and stared at Russell. This was a very impolite move. Even Robert next to him felt a little uncomfortable. Russell's words just now were already polite in terms of his personality. After all, the status of the two people was not equal. But what exactly does the Dutch ambassador in front of him mean? Davis smiled dumbly. "Minister Russell, you are very good. Only you thought of asking the Netherlands for help. I think others don't understand the benefits of doing so. You can call me here today, obviously you have a comprehensive plan. We are all smart people. For actions like just now, I think it is better to cancel this meeting as soon as possible, so as not to delay everyone's official business." What a delay for everyone's official business. Robert felt strange when he heard it. This Dutch ambassador is bold enough, and likes to interact with people in a direct and domineering way, always hitting the point unexpectedly. Just like now, he knew that Minister Russell would not let him go easily, so he said that he had seized the advantage of the right to speak. Russell still had a blank expression on his face, but he felt helpless for the other party's difficulty in his heart. The two were twice as old, but they became opponents in negotiations. The confrontation between the old and the young, however, sparked sparks. However, for the current Britain, or even more specifically, for the Whig Party and him, it was inappropriate. In fact, if it were in the early years, he would have blushed long ago, because the lesson of South Africa this time was a lifelong shame for him and Viscount Palmerston. Otherwise he and Viscount Palmerston would not have chosen to find the Dutch Prime Minister. Now the situation in Britain is turbulent, and the Tories are watching the weaknesses of the Whigs from the side. If it were not for the firm support of Queen Victoria, Palmerston's cabinet would not know that he, the foreign minister, had at least been replaced, because Britain was defeated so badly in South Africa. There are even many people who demanded that they step down. The current situation has been temporarily stabilized due to the support of the Queen, and the Tories dare not make trouble at this time, fearing to offend the Queen. Therefore, this window period is his opportunity. Davis brought up the old things again, with the purpose of angering him, and he naturally knew very well. "I said, Ambassador Davis, you know, the British Navy has not been reduced at all, and it is still sailing unimpeded around the world. Counter-threat me. Britain's naval strength in the world is superior. If the Netherlands is blocked in the Atlantic, the Netherlands' southward route to support the colonies will enter a dangerous situation. Minister Russell, you know that the Netherlands has allies in Prussia and the French Empire." Davis pulled out the flags of the two allies of the Tripartite Pact. Russell smiled slightly, but Davis felt the sharpness of his gaze, and his words were even more thorny. "France? In fact, before you, I have summoned the French Empire's ambassador to the UK, and we had a very pleasant conversation. As for the other ally of the Netherlands, Prussia, Davis, you know that the Prussian Crown Princess Victoria and the Prussian Crown Prince Frederick are very pro-British, so Prussia is a potential ally of the United Kingdom. The Queen has already written to Berlin a few days ago, asking for the guarantee of close ties between the British royal family and the Prussian royal family, and William I has responded positively. Want to resolve it? No way. The minister must have made a mistake. That is, Prussia needs me more than we need them, just like Britain now supports Austria, and they need our support to seize the leadership of the German Confederation. Russell was stunned, and then said calmly, Ambassador Davis, you should know that Britain can actually ease its relations with France. But in that case, Britain will have to pay a heavy price. You know, His Majesty Napoleon III is not a king who is greedy for petty gains. He is a wise majesty with great talents and strategies. I don't think he is a king who is willing to be controlled by others. After hearing this, Russell said in his heart that it was difficult, and then laughed and scolded, Ambassador Davis, you don't know, ever since the Netherlands and Britain exchanged those two territories, Her Majesty the Queen has been dissatisfied with your William IV for being one step ahead, but in the Belgian situation, he lost your trick. I have to say that your young King William IV is truly a genius. He actually thought of not being greedy when he divided Belgium with France and Prussia. The originally almost balanced situation, as the Netherlands harvested 2 Belgian provinces and France harvested 3 Belgian provinces, originally only had an advantage in numbers, but in terms of expanding the territory, the Dutch language has become larger than the French language. Even in the Belgian general election, a relatively unpopular figure, Dan Adang, finally came to power. It was almost a foregone conclusion that Biden would be the Speaker of the Parliament this year. In this way, the Netherlands almost surrounded the Belgian rights. Do you think the Queen would give a good face to William IV of the Netherlands at this time? After all, the Belgian King Leopold II, who is now undermined by the Netherlands, is the Queen's cousin. That's why the Queen is complaining that she really regrets letting the Netherlands take so much advantage this time. Davis laughed, diluting the pressure that Russell exerted on Davis by taking advantage of the Queen, and said, Minister Russell, now it's not a question of who has taken advantage, but Britain wants the Netherlands to go to South Africa and take those Dutch people away from South Africa, but how will these people survive after they leave? Where will they settle down? The Netherlands has so much area that's different, Minister Russell. You know, the Netherlands also needs compensation. These ethnic groups are also victims. After all, it was you who drove them to the land in the north, which led to the subsequent development of the founding of the country. In general, Britain should be fully responsible, and we are the victims of the Netherlands. Robert saw the two of them talking and laughing freely, which was difficult to touch and imagine in his previous writing on foreign policy. That was just talk on paper. This was a real live fire exercise with real swords and guns. In the past few days, he has learned a lot, and what is in front of him is real diplomacy. This Dutch ambassador named Davis is really not easy to deal with. But Russell is not someone who can be manipulated casually. The Netherlands is naturally the victim. After all, the Dutch population in the East Indies is too small, making it difficult to control. You often encounter attacks from the indigenous people on your rule there. Therefore, we think that 400,000 or 500,000 people is not too many or too few. If you migrate people there and add them to the population of the East Indies, the Netherlands will have nearly 1 million people there, and then there will be no more trouble. Is he so kind that he actually considers us, the Netherlands, so thoughtfully? He must have bad intentions. Of course, without immigration, our rule there will be the same as yours in Malaya now. Russell said directly, Ambassador Davis, I think the relationship between the Netherlands and Britain can actually be closer. What do you think? Davis nodded and said, we in the Netherlands have always believed that Britain and we are very close partners. No, I think the Netherlands can be a more appropriate ally of Britain. Russell smiled and said, the Netherlands and we once had the same king, just like us in Hanover more than 20 years ago. It's a pity that the Hanoverian constitution stipulates that the kingship can be passed down from father to son, otherwise Queen Victoria would have taken over there, and then the two countries would believe in loving each other and become neighbors, which would be a wonderful thing, and the same goes for the Netherlands. What a wonderful thing. This is a disguised way of forcing and warning him. The Kingdom of Hanover next to the Netherlands is a blood friend of Britain. Be careful that the Netherlands will be attacked by Britain on the sea and the Kingdom of Hanover on land. Minister Russell, you know, the Netherlands is famous for its peace-loving people. The Netherlands does not want to provoke a war, so the Netherlands will arm itself to prevent offensive people with hostility, even though we know that the other party will lose. Who would believe it? Russell, then how can the Netherlands help Britain join the ranks of peaceful countries? Here it comes. Here comes the main topic. Robert looked at Davis nervously. Because the ball is now at the feet of the ambassador, but he doesn't know what the Netherlands will want. Davis was stunned to see that Russell was so direct, but his reaction was also fast. He asked in return, "How can Britain make up for our losses?" After all, as Minister Russell said just now, if our people withdraw, what if France and Prussia become dissatisfied with the Netherlands? These losses should also be counted to make up for the loss of the Netherlands' allies. Davis's words seemed true and false. Since Russell had shown up and invited him, it was impossible to always play tricks or not get to the point. It would be better to put things on the table. I believe that based on this point, the Netherlands will not fall out with Britain. They have even understood the practicality and practical character of the Dutch. In this case, he started with this, which is a good start. The Netherlands may lose the trust of its allies. Russell smiled bitterly, and Robert was also stunned. Is there anyone in the world who can talk nonsense more than this Dutch ambassador? Today is the first chapter. Please support with recommendation votes and monthly tickets. Chapter 114, Australia returns to the Netherlands? After Davis said this, Russell certainly would not doubt the other party's intention. The Netherlands actually wanted Britain to compensate the Kingdom of the Netherlands for the losses caused by the Dutch persuading the Dutch to leave. Why would the Netherlands turn to cooperate with Britain? You should know that the Netherlands in South Africa, the Orange Free State Republic, a country that is almost all Dutch, has always had close relations with the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Many Dutch in the Transvaal Republic also miss the Kingdom of the Netherlands as their homeland. Our cabinet is very concerned about their living environment, Davis said seriously. However, this seriousness was used to strive for more compensation from Britain, so the two British people opposite him could not feel that his seriousness was a compliment. Russell, the area of the Netherlands is too small. This is true, but the Netherlands has a large amount of territory overseas, East India near the equator, New Guinea Island to the south, and the northern part of Australia that we just transferred to you, and even the Alaska Peninsula at the northern end of North America, etc. These large overseas territories, not to mention the small number of 400,000 or 500,000 people, even if it is increased tenfold, it can be taken care of and resettled. Why should Britain cooperate with the Netherlands? You have to know that Britain is the most powerful country and does not need to look at other countries' eyes at all. However, the evolution of the European situation in the past 6 months has brought shame to the British diplomatic community under his leadership. It turns out that Britain really cannot rely on the Navy to control Europe. Not only that, Britain is also facing the challenge of a grouped Europe. However, many people in Britain can see clearly that behind these groups, almost all of them are put together by the Netherlands. As long as they rely on winning over the Netherlands first and stab the necks of these European power teams, I believe that other countries will not dare to form a power alliance against Britain alone no matter how they think in their hearts. However, Russell and Robert certainly don't know the real situation. Davis's words are a kind of reconciliation route for the Netherlands. Britain is too powerful. Davis clearly knows that the current Netherlands is far from being a match for Britain. Although the Dutch Navy is good, that's all. However, if Britain wants to take over the Netherlands, it will also hurt its bones. In that case, Britain's position as the European maritime hegemon will definitely be shaken. After all, the Dutch Navy is the 8th in the world, and its tonnage is more than 1/3 of the British Navy. If the Netherlands is to be taken down, the British fleets from all over the world must be gathered in the North Sea to take down the Dutch Navy in one fell swoop. However, in that case, Britain's colonial forces in various places will be shaken by the loss of the suppression of the British Navy. Moreover, he also knew that there was a Dutch Navy hidden in the East Indies that was not inferior to the mainland. If the mainland was invaded by Britain, the naval fleet in the East Indies would be dispatched to the northwest. With more than 60,000 army troops there, Britain in Malaya and even the Indian subcontinent would become the target of the Dutch attack. At that time, Britain would definitely retreat quickly. Davis, it's quite big, but I heard that these people are a bit picky. They like the land used by the British Empire because it will feel more intimate. After all, they have been living with the British Empire in South Africa for more than half a century. Russell's face was also green and red. No way. Robert wanted to vomit. Robert frowned upon hearing this, thinking to himself, if he were the British Foreign Secretary Russell at this time, what would he do? The Netherlands wants South Australia and Western Australia. In Buckingham Palace, Queen Victoria of England sat on the throne with a displeased look on her face. Below her were the calm British Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston and the British Foreign Secretary Russell with a wry smile, in addition to the British Crown Prince Edward. Russell smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, The Dutch ambassador said that this is compensation for those guys in the Orange Free State and the Transvaal Republic respectively. Compensation? Queen Victoria hadn't spoken yet, but Crown Prince Edward said angrily, "The Netherlands actually dared to ask for compensation? Your Majesty, there are nearly 50,000 bodies of British soldiers buried in South Africa, and they are still exploding there, causing such great damage to Britain's international reputation. The Netherlands sheltered such culprits, and Britain let them go, which was already a leniency. I didn't expect that they would dare to ask us for territory. Do they think that the British gunboats and artillery shells are duds? Your Majesty, I think it is a wrong choice to win over the Netherlands to negotiate with these Dutch people in South Africa. We should avenge the lost soldiers, so that we can regain the people's trust in the royal family and the cabinet." Crown Prince Edward thought that what he said moved him to tears, but when he finished speaking, he found that several people did not speak. Viscount Palmerston smiled and said nothing, without a ripple. Russell was calm with a little respect, like encouragement, but also like a polite gesture, and it was hard to figure out the reason. When his eyes fell on Queen Victoria, he got a mouth shape to shut up, and then ignored him. Queen Victoria said coldly, "Does the Netherlands feel that Britain is too kind, so they always think that British things are easier to use?" The smiling Viscount Palmerston said, "The Netherlands is paving the way for retreat." What do you mean? Crown Prince Edward was just ignored and felt wronged and angry. He felt that the Whig Party was really hateful. If Disraeli was here, he would definitely not be as aggrieved as before. So, at this time, he couldn't help asking. Viscount Palmerston walked to the map that had been placed on the stronghold, pointed to the location of the Netherlands on the map, and said, "Your Majesty, Crown Prince, please look, this is the location of the Netherlands territory in Europe. On the left is us across the sea from them, to the south is the French Empire, to the east is the Kingdom of Prussia, a big country in the seemingly macy German Confederation, and to the north is the Kingdom of Hanover. It is the first layer. The second layer of land neighbors are the Kingdom of Spain, the Kingdom of Bavaria, the Duchy of Württemberg, the Austrian Empire, the Kingdom of Denmark, Sweden, and the Russian Empire. Almost all of the surrounding countries are opponents that are difficult to defeat in terms of land force compared to the Netherlands. Therefore, if the Netherlands wants to rise, it can only find a place for development overseas. South Africa was originally good, but it became our overseas colony after the Vienna Conference. What about East India? Crown Prince Edward asked again. It is also a place of 4 wars. Originally, Kalimantan Island is big enough, but we occupied Malaya in the north. This is definitely a natural fear for them who have been threatened by the surrounding powers. Therefore, with the northern part of Australia and the Northern Territory falling into their hands, now they are asking us for Western Australia and South Australia in the south. The idea of William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands has become obvious. The Netherlands actually wants the entire Australian continent? Wishful thinking, said Crown Prince Edward with a sneer. But to his surprise, Queen Victoria got rid of her previous coldness and replaced it with calmness. "Do you think the Netherlands is sure to take the rest of Australia from us?" Unlike her son, Crown Prince Edward, who spent all day drinking and partying, Queen Victoria was very familiar with Viscount Palmerston and knew that he would never fire blanks. Since he proposed it, it must be something that made him feel irritated. Seeing this, Crown Prince Edward secretly hated Viscount Palmerston. Of course, he was only afraid of Victoria, his mother, who had been extremely strict with him since he was a child, and did not dare to hate her. "Yes, I have recently become interested in the Netherlands, so I took out a history of the Netherlands' recent exchanges with other countries and made an amazing discovery. That is, they actually followed a secret thread in implementing various foreign policies, especially after William IV inherited the throne of the Netherlands. He allied with France and Prussia, then exchanged territories with Tsarist Russia, and confronted our influence in Belgium, and finally divided Belgium. In order to be safe and sound, fearing British retaliation, the war in South Africa was ignited. Britain was suddenly too busy to take care of other things, and the threat to the Netherlands landed safely. What a beautiful move. Your Majesty, the Netherlands has a developed industry. With the rise of plastics, the Netherlands has occupied half of the country, and the various products derived from it are supported by the global market. The country's scientific and technological strength should not be underestimated, and its navy is also good. In this case, if Britain is hostile to it, it may damage the foundation established by Britain's ancestors for hundreds of years. Therefore, I think that it is better to make peace with the Netherlands than to be hostile to them. Just like what I said last time, a Netherlands that has a relaxed relationship with Britain can build a safe wall for Britain along the Atlantic coast of Europe, and increase Britain's free guards in Central and Northern Europe. So, according to the Prime Minister, do you mean that we need to bow down to the Netherlands? Edward asked disdainfully. It's not that he is stupid, but he had a quarrel with William IV recently because of something, so he really didn't want Britain and the Netherlands to reconcile. In that case, he would face some competition and get enough support. Okay, Edward, you are here to listen to politics and learn, not to discuss national affairs. You are not qualified for it with your current strength. Queen Victoria made the final decision. After criticizing Edward, she said, "Does the Netherlands want Australia to develop its own strength without being threatened by European countries?" Yes, they are afraid that after facing the possibility of European countries launching a war against the Netherlands can retain its strength in the Far East and fight back, just like a cat, adding another life to survive. In this case, we think we can cooperate with the Netherlands. After all, it is far away from us. For us, it is a good opportunity to lose our opponent. Edward heard them say this and understood that nothing could be worse for him. Queen Victoria frowned and asked, "However, South Australia and Western Australia are so large. Isn't it too presumptuous for the Netherlands to withdraw from South Africa in exchange for such a large area?" Ahem. Russell stood up and said shockingly, "Your Majesty, Davis said that if Your Majesty agrees, then the Netherlands can tell Britain the secret of the huge gold treasure in South Africa, but in that case, we also ask the British Empire to give the remaining Australian territory to the Netherlands." Chapter 115 The King of Denmark visits. What gold treasure? And Sir Russell, are you sure it's a gift? Edward didn't want to humiliate himself, but he couldn't help but sneer. But this time, surprisingly, his mother Queen Victoria acquiesced in agreement, which made him inexplicably excited. So the young man couldn't help but raise his head higher. According to Davis, the gold there is more than all the gold in the Netherlands now sniff. The three of them couldn't help but inhale a breath of cold air. Is there really so much? Why didn't the Netherlands take it? This is one of their questions, but the Netherlands was in South Africa much earlier than the UK, so it is not impossible for them to know some secret news. If it is confirmed to be true, then I agree to this deal. Mother Edward wanted to speak, but Queen Victoria stopped her. She said seriously, when governing a country, you can't act on impulse. You must keep this in mind. Then she said to Viscount Palmerston and Russell, if the Netherlands can prove that it is true, I agree to give Australia to the Netherlands, but the premise is that the Netherlands must ensure that the mainland cannot be used to attack Britain. In addition, the cost of transporting Australia's population will be paid by the Netherlands. Transportation costs? Where do you want to settle those Australian immigrants, Your Majesty? Is New Zealand not good? Queen Victoria said meaningfully. New Zealand is indeed good. Australia's 400,000 British people can be settled, and it can also serve as a British outpost to supervise the Netherlands. After receiving a detailed report on South Africa, Queen Victoria finally agreed to the Netherlands' request for Australia, because the golden gold in South Africa, compared with a desolate Australia, the Queen prefers gold more. As for the huge colonies of many people, Victoria didn't care at all, because Britain didn't have enough colonies. Not to mention the distant ones. Canada across the Atlantic Ocean is comparable to the United States, and there is also the Pearl of India in the Indian Ocean, especially the latter, which is the Queen's most interested in at present. Therefore, Australia, which only has sheep, kangaroos and indigenous savages, is just a commodity for the current Britain. Moreover, she also stated in advance that the cost of the transfer of 400,000 British immigrants to New Zealand was covered by the Netherlands. She felt that such a policy should be passed in the House of Commons. After all, the current leader of the House of Commons is the Whig Party led by Viscount Palmerston. At the same time, in Amsterdam, William IV welcomed his distinguished guest on this day. His visit made William IV even lead the ministers of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to hold a huge state banquet to welcome him. Your Majesty, please allow me to welcome you on behalf of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. For a long time, the mutual assistance between our two countries has made our current close relationship. In the reception hall of his own Kingdom of the Netherlands, William IV smiled with just the right smile to the Danish King Frederick VI, who was only 54 years old, the same age as his father, William III, but looked sick. William IV extended a cordial welcome to the king. This was the first time he had received a king from another kingdom since he became the king of the Netherlands. However, with the help of his subordinates, he quickly adapted to the situation. For hundreds of years, the two countries have cooperated in the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, which has made this sea area peaceful and calm, and everyone has benefited a lot. Although Frederick VI was weak, he insisted on making this trip to the Netherlands. Because Denmark now needs some strong foreign aid. He was asking for help, so he immediately responded positively, "Yes, no matter in the past or in the future, I think our relationship will remain friendly. In fact, I came here this time with the intention of making friends. I hope that the relationship between the Netherlands and Denmark will be further improved." Frederick VI looked at William IV with a slightly wise old man's eyes that had seen the vicissitudes of nearly half a century. "Your Majesty, William IV is very different from your father, His Majesty William II. I don't know what you are talking about." William IV smiled slightly, and seemed willing to continue the topic. "Ha ha ha." Frederick VI looked at William IV meaningfully and said admiringly, "Your father is a conservative person and does things carefully, but your Majesty William IV is bold and open, and your approach of turning bad times into good times makes me feel that this is not what a king of a great country should do." The faces of many Dutch ministers beside him changed. This seemed to be looking down on the king of the Netherlands. Could it be that this Danish king, who had no descendants, took the trouble to come from Denmark just to give their king William IV a slap in the face? William IV smiled slightly and asked tentatively, "Compared with Britain, do we, who are not as powerful as them, have to respond to the challenges of the powers in silence?" "Ahem," Frederick VI said after a few coughs. "In fact, we admire the courage of His Majesty William IV. He has achieved so many results at such a young age. It's good to be young. Unlike me, I am no longer at the age of daring to fight and work hard." William IV didn't care. If he could do what he was doing when he was young, there would be many young kings in the world. Not to mention the ancient country in the East. Forget it, it's a headache to think too much. After the grand state banquet, William IV was surprised that Frederick VI actually asked to hold a secret meeting with him. Two people. William IV has learned Danish quite well because he has been a disciple of Andersen for several years. Even without an interpreter, the two of them can talk in Danish. Frederick VI was also a person who admired Dutch culture very much. In the early years, the Netherlands was the most powerful country in Europe for investment and business. In Central and Northern Europe, Dutch was also very popular among partners. Therefore, many royal family members and nobles in various countries were basically familiar with Dutch. Of course, it can't be compared with French. If it weren't for my father, I wouldn't have needed to train so quickly. It's full of pressure. Governing a country is really not easy. You have to take care of their food and safety, and give them freedom of thought. It was better in the last century when the royal family was strong, and we kings were comfortable. It's not like we have to seek public opinion so hard, which makes us feel like we are not legitimate, but elected. Frederick VI was touched by this. Yes, after the Great Revolution that swept Europe in 1848, after the royal rule was overthrown by the revolution, life was too difficult for us in the royal family. However, Your Majesty William IV, I heard that you in the Netherlands have a very high support rate for the royal family, so I came here specially to learn from you. William IV felt amused. This old man is still pretending to be stupid until now. It's obvious that he is. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Frederick VI's Surprise. Your Majesty Frederick VI, it is said that Denmark is doing very well now. Its geographical location is at the bottleneck of the Baltic Sea. The customs duties collected from ships passing through it every year are enough to make Denmark get a considerable amount of finances, which is a treatment that the Netherlands does not have. Old man, if you don't say it, I will reveal this scar. Frederick VI's face changed, and then he smiled bitterly. It's better not to mention it. I feel uncomfortable when I mention this. What's wrong? You still feel uncomfortable when you have money to collect. Do you want to live? William IV asked, pretending to be ignorant and dissatisfied. Frederick VI didn't care whether William IV did it on purpose. But he seemed to have found a chatterbox and confided these uncomfortable things. It turns out that Denmark's location is the most special in Europe, because they control the Øresund Strait. All Baltic coastal countries want to sail ships to the Atlantic Ocean, or other countries want to enter the Baltic Sea. They need to pass through the Øresund Strait ruled by Denmark. Customs duties have been in place since the 17th century. Now 200 years have passed and it has become a common practice for all countries. However, among the Baltic countries, there are countries that are dissatisfied with Denmark's tax collection, namely Denmark's former northern ally Sweden and the newly rising power Prussia in the east. Sweden is also on the north shore of the Øresund Strait, and is dissatisfied with Denmark's collection of taxes, which it believes is unfair. Finally, at the beginning of this century, when Sweden occupied Norway from Denmark, it also forced Denmark to give up taxing Swedish ships. Prussia is not among them. All of Prussia's waters are in the Baltic Sea, so its navy is even within the scope of Denmark's tax collection, which has caused dissatisfaction throughout Prussia and hostility towards Denmark. Especially after Bismarck, the current Prussian prime minister, came to power at the end of 1861, he launched various attacks on Denmark. In addition to luring the Russian Empire to express dissatisfaction with import and export tariffs, he also launched an all-round attack strategy on the issue of the ownership of Schleswig and Holstein. As a result, Frederick VI faced huge anxiety and also felt invisible pressure. Bismarck, the newly elected Prime Minister of Prussia, has taken all very powerful actions against Denmark. If not handled properly, the two duchies in the south may break away from Denmark under the instigation of Prussia, and even the Duchy of Holstein in the German Confederation may become a bridgehead for attacking Denmark. However, he could only guess that everything that happened in the two duchies, even Prussia's request that Denmark change the crown prince to another family, was just an excuse for Bismarck to launch an attack on Denmark. William IV naturally knew this. In his previous life, he had read about the first battle in 1862 when the German Empire defeated Denmark, Austria, and France one by one in 10 years and rose to a higher position. Unlike Christian IX, who was later called cowardly, with poor political awareness but knew how to protect himself, Frederick VI had a very big picture view. Even during his tenure, the relationship between Denmark and Sweden, which had once fallen out because of Norway, had been thawed during his reign, with Oscar I and Karl XVI of Sweden, respectively. Originally, they wanted to form an alliance recently, but because of Prussia's repeated threats, Sweden had doubts about the opinions of the largest exporter of steel and coke and other steel-making materials, and the largest provider of food sources. It was precisely because of this that Frederick VI was a little panicked. The British side once again urged Denmark to allow Britain to establish a naval port in Denmark in exchange for Denmark's protection by Britain. However, this aroused the dissatisfaction of the giant Russian Empire, because this was a threat to Tsarist Russia, and it promoted the Russian Empire and Prussia to stand together. At this time, the alliance between the Netherlands and Sweden made him feel a flash of inspiration. So, there was this trip to the south to visit the Netherlands. This tax is getting harder and harder to deal with, Frederick VI said again. As the guardian of the safe passage of the Atlantic and the Baltic Sea, we in Denmark are under increasing pressure from various countries. This position is too critical, so the threats imposed by the major powers on Denmark are even more extreme. Frederick VI's confession at this time won a little favor from William IV, who was a smart old man. But from the banquet just now, Frederick VI kept asking about William IV's marriage situation, and he seemed to understand vaguely that Alexandra in Copenhagen had begun to exert her strength. Because he had understood from the letters that Alexandra had communicated with, in order to intervene in this important maritime checkpoint in Northern Europe, Britain chose to make Denmark its own ally. Britain even gave up the position of crown princess to a little princess born to the crown prince of Denmark. This was obviously a cooperation. Being able to climb up to the United Kingdom, Frederick VI is not stupid and will not easily refuse, but he is not as excited as Crown Prince Christian. The latter will not worry about Prussia challenging his human rights to the throne with the support of Britain, but Frederick VI does not think so. He is the King of Denmark and he is also thinking about the autonomy of the Kingdom of Denmark, not the throne of Crown Prince Christian. These are two different patterns and different views. Therefore, when Alexandra handed the letter from William IV to Frederick VI, he was stunned. The invitation letter from the new King of the Netherlands was actually delivered to him in such a private letter. This means something different. When he took the letter from Alexandra, He didn't even need to find a word about Alexandra in the letter, but he had already said thousands of words. Has anyone ever seen a king of a country send a letter to another head of state to his private hands first, and then hand it over to him? This kind of relationship has already made it clear that the two have a relationship, and it also shows that the princess actually has a close correspondence with William IV, which made him feel surprised. And the content of the letter did not disappoint him. William IV actually proposed to invite Denmark to join the Dutch-Swedish customs union, becoming the first new member to join, forming a large economy of the Nordic customs union, to counter the two customs unions within the German Confederation. At the same time, the Netherlands is also preparing to cooperate with Sweden and African colonies, and also expressed the hope that Denmark will apply to join, etc. However, all the details of this need Frederick VI to go to the Netherlands before the dust settles. But he didn't know that everything he did during this period of time fell into the eyes of the other party, and he had already become an important weight in Frederick VI's heart, a weapon to help Denmark maintain its neutrality against the weapons of major powers. Since Frederick VI went south, he would not easily let go of the man who was targeting his Princess Alexandra. However, he no longer cared so much. From asking whether the Netherlands was developing smoothly in Central Africa to hearing that the Netherlands would send more troops and immigrants to South Africa and was preparing to hold a three-nation alliance meeting with Prussia and France, he knew everything clearly, far from the sickly state of the previous banquet. This made William IV know that the old man in front of him was really good at pretending, but if he was pretending, why did he really die in history at the beginning of next year? William IV was very puzzled. After circling around, Frederick asked seemingly indifferently, "I heard that the Netherlands, France, and Prussia have been in a mess with Britain in South Africa after the clash with Belgium. Your three countries support those three small countries there, which has caused Britain a lot of trouble in South Africa. To be honest, I think that Britain's national strength has declined rapidly recently, both in prestige and strength. However, this also brings crisis to the Netherlands. You know, France is unreliable, and Prussia is quite ambitious. From the Dutch perspective, I can't help but do this. Of course, I understand the British people's resentment, and I understand that there are only interests between allies in this world, especially between two countries with adjacent territories. They are wary of each other, afraid that the other will stab them in the back. But at present, our three countries have not reached the point of damage. Therefore, Your Majesty Frederick VI, don't worry. Don't worry." Frederick VI sounded as if he was being seen as being too suspicious. He took a careful look at William IV's expression, and felt that he seemed to have something in mind, so he slowly said, "It seems that His Majesty William IV seems to be more confident in himself, but Queen Victoria and Viscount Palmerston are all powerful figures who have been in Europe for decades. No one can take them lightly. It seems to be in your favor now, but maybe they have already deployed something you can't see behind the scenes. It's better to be safe than sorry." Well, William IV affirmed the other party's good intentions, but did not refute the other party. "In fact, Your Majesty Frederick VI, I shouldn't have told you, but in order to show the close relationship between us, I told you it's okay. In fact, in recent days, I have ordered the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs to start work with Britain. Now I am just waiting for news from there." Seeing that Frederick VI did not speak, he obviously did not want to listen to empty talk and general words, but liked to believe, so he said, "In order to ease the relationship with Britain, and to win the Far East in Australia, I even revealed to London the location of a major gold mining area in South Africa. And the location is in the Transvaal Republic." Ah! Frederick VI was shocked when he heard this. There is a large gold mining area in South Africa. If this news gets out, then this will definitely be a territory that all countries want to fight for. Since the Netherlands said so. Wait, did William IV just say that he wanted to exchange for an Australia? Could it be? Chapter 117 Wave of Migration to Australia. Frederick VI was about to ask, but he saw Huspet van, the Dutch foreign minister who had just talked at the banquet, walked in quickly. After looking at him, he whispered something in William IV's ear. He seemed to hear the word Britain vaguely, but it was not very clear, and it seemed to be related to South Africa. This was about Britain and the Netherlands, which made him itchy and wanted to know the whole truth, but because of his identity, he held back. However, what news did Huspet van bring? He observed that although William IV seemed to be calm, the corners of his mouth pursed up, indicating that the news was good news, which made him understand that the King of the Netherlands had gained something again. However, he didn't wait long, and William IV said to him directly, "As I said just now, Queen Victoria agreed, we will carry out migration activities in the near future. South Africa, the Netherlands will recognize the British territory in South Africa, and at the same time, Britain will also recognize the Netherlands' colonial status in Africa, and Australia will also become the Netherlands' territory." Ah. That's all. Britain is too easy to talk to. The Danish king was stunned. Many countries fought to death just for a piece of territory, but now the Netherlands has taken so much without making a sound, and it was taken from Britain. It was bold and reckless, but it was too accurate. At this moment, Frederick VI finally made up his mind. Compared with Britain, he thought Denmark was more inclined to the Netherlands. On the morning of July 29, 1862, the capital of the Dutch East Indies, northwest of Java Province, Jakarta, is the administrative center of the Netherlands in the Far East and the seat of the governor's office. Therefore, it is generally home to the elites of the Netherlands in the Far East, but the elites are always a minority, and most of the Dutch people here are still at the bottom of society. Most of the residences are rented. Herbert Sack, who had just got up, pressed his head hard. "Damn it, I drank too much last night." He put on his shoes and kicked away the Dutch beer bottle beside the bed, even though he had met with the Far East manager of this beer company half a month ago. "Nika, pour me a basin of hot water." Sack shook his head. "God, you are no longer a wealthy man in the Far East, you are now just a bankrupt. I just finished washing up, opened the door and was about to go to the mailbox to get today's newspaper." Unexpectedly, the door next door also opened at this time, and a middle-aged woman with a sad face walked out. Seeing Sack, she greeted him. "Hi, good morning, Sack, haven't you found a new job yet?" "Oh, I will definitely find it today, landlady. God can prove that I will pay you back last month's rent as soon as possible." The landlady smiled and said, "Well, Sack, I was just saying hello to you. I didn't mean to urge you. You are always so direct in doing things. It makes me embarrassed." Sack took down the newspaper he subscribed to, nodded at the landlady, and said nothing more. After entering the house and closing the door, he muttered in a low voice, "It would be strange if you didn't mean that. Since I didn't pay the rent at the beginning of this month, you have been waiting for me almost every morning as if by appointment, and you greeted me every time. I have never seen you so kind when I paid the rent on time before." But he could understand her position. If it were him, he might be even more violent and use a more uncivilized tone. Shaking his head, he ate the extremely bad breakfast that he had never even glanced at before, and opened the local newspaper of the Dutch East Indies, the Far Eastern Daily. He bit the half of the bread in his mouth and suddenly stopped chewing, because the information brought by today's newspaper was too shocking for him, so shocking that he was suffocated. Sack only read the headline on the front page: "The Netherlands launches a large-scale development of Australia." Seeing this headline made him feel very strange. Although he admitted that many people in the past believed that there was gold in northern Australia, it used to be the territory of the British. Even if it now belongs to the Netherlands, everything seems to be still unknown. Therefore, many of them, the East Indians, are holding a wait-and-see attitude towards this. But now this headline seems to repeat the content of the previous report, and there is also a large-scale development. There are few people there, so it is better to develop Sumatra, which has more people. At least the route there is important and more Europeans stay there. Of course, he also recognized Queensland as a good place for farmers, otherwise there wouldn't be so many people immigrating there from the East Indies. According to a newspaper report a few days ago, more than 50,000 Dutch nationals immigrated there in the past few months, and the number is still increasing. Many people predict that by the end of this year, there will be more than 200,000 Dutch immigrants there. But this won't impress Sack immigration. After all, the British in Australia are living very comfortably in the south, because Sydney in the south is the place in Australia that is most similar to Europe. If it's there, he may give up the familiar Jakarta. After all, Sydney has good potential for growth. Look away from the title and read the content below. Oh, my God, did the Netherlands take over another Australian region of the UK? Fortunately, the newspaper did not keep him in suspense. He continued to read on and was shocked, because consistent with the content revealed in the title, Britain actually transferred the entire southern Australia to the Netherlands. The situation in South Africa, which has attracted much attention recently, is that under the persuasion of the Netherlands, the Dutch people in these two places chose to withdraw from the situation in South Africa, return to the embrace of the Netherlands, go north to Central Africa, and assist the Netherlands' foreign policy. Some people in these two places will immigrate to Australia. Moreover, it is clearly stated that Perth in the west and Adelaide and Melbourne in the south, as well as Sydney in the southeast and Brisbane in the east, will all be their immigration directions. The newspaper also called for both Dutch and indigenous people in East India to immigrate to Australia. Has all of Australia become the Netherlands'? He was stunned at first, and then he trembled all over at this moment. He grabbed the newspaper hard and said loudly as if to vent, "God is my father. The opportunity is right in front of us, Sack, your chance is here, and you will once again become one of the richest people in the Netherlands in the Far East." Sack threw the bread he was biting on the ground and didn't eat breakfast. He grabbed his coat and went out. But perhaps the noise was a little loud and attracted the suspicion of his wife Nika. However, he did not explain. He just smiled gratefully at her and said, "Wait for me to come back." When he was going out, the landlady was there again. Seeing him go out, she deliberately asked, "Hey, Mr. Sack, why are you so anxious?" "I'm going to get the money." "Going to the bank?" "I didn't expect you still have savings, but banks are usually open after 9 o'clock. It's just past 7 o'clock now. If you go early, I'm afraid you will have to wait for a long time." "No, landlady, I'm going to borrow some money." "Don't worry, I will pay you the rent when I come back, and then take the money to South to Australia. There is where my life will rise." Chapter 118, Backlash from Allies? Surabaya, the Dutch East Indies, is the second largest city on Java Island. It is located in the northeast of Java Island. It is also the second largest military port of the Dutch East Indies Navy, with a large Dutch Navy stationed here. "Steve, show me how much this thing is worth. Do you still want to do business?" "You are not enthusiastic at all." A vigorous young man slammed the door and shouted in front of an old pawn shop with a long history. "Why is it you, KG, the national treasure of the Kingdom of Siam you brought last time, just exchanged for 10,000 Dutch guilders, £400, and it's gone so quickly? It seems that it's less than a week. You spend too much?" The owner of the shop, Steve, who is about 50 years old, seems to be giving advice, but he is actually very happy in his heart, because only in this way can he drive people in front of him to find more rare treasures to sell and pawn here, so that his business will be better. What will it be this time? Seeing the little guy's confident and proud expression, the harvest should be quite big. "Look, this is a treasure inherited from the indigenous people in Australia. It is said that it is more than 10,000 years old. It is the personal token of their chieftain and priceless." "Let me see it." The boss checked it confidently. As his eyes fell on the token, he never left it again, because on this oval object that looked like stone and transparent like ember, as big as a billiard ball, it was covered with various patterns. It didn't look like it was just carved, but it looked like the primitive people's life was recorded in it, lifelike and desirable. "How about it? It's good as I said. I tell you, if it's too low, I won't sell it to you, because this time I raise enough funds, I will develop and settle in Australia." The boss woke up after hearing this, frowned and was about to express his dissatisfaction with the other party deliberately threatening him to name a price, but in the end he held back, because when his eyes returned to the thing in his hand again, he found that he was reluctant to return it. So he softened his tone and said, 20,000 Dutch guilders, £800, it's too little. It is said that the locals in Europe like Oriental silk and ceramics very much. I plan to open a store selling national specialty products of these Oriental countries, so that I can live a stable life. Why do you always talk about Australia? Northern Australia is too desolate. You think it's better there than here? Who said to go to the north? We will go to Southern Australia, the south. Isn't that British territory? Boss, didn't you read today's newspaper? Read the newspaper? What's so good about it? Every day some people express their opinions on it, about some philosophy of governing the country, but what is actually implemented is far from reality. It only makes us brainwashed, alone and troubled. If I have that time, I might as well spend time with my grandchildren. The boss curled his lips and said with disdain. KG took out today's newspaper from his pocket, spread it out, and pointed at the headline towards the boss, saying, "No, boss, there may be the news you want in here." The boss looked down at the place where his finger was pointing with doubt, and was attracted by it at a glance. KG seemed to have expected the result and said, "How about it, Boss, finish reading it quickly, you still have to go back to play with your grandchildren later. The boss read the newspaper twice in a row, and then suddenly put the newspaper down. Of course, my grandson and granddaughter are also very obedient to their grandmother. KG, why don't you tell me your idea and don't waste time? I think this thing of yours is 50,000 Dutch guilders, 3,200 pounds. How about I take out another 50,000 Dutch guilders and split it 50-50? How about we go south to Australia together? I think Sydney is a good place. KG's heart moved, but he pretended to be concerned and asked, but in this way, the distance between you and your grandchildren will be a bit far. I will feel guilty if it affects your grandfather-grandchild relationship. The boss Steve said indifferently, KG, you know me. Compared with making money, I can actually put aside everything else. And you also know that I am very familiar with the reselling business. When the time comes, you will be responsible for getting the goods and I will be responsible for reselling. The cooperation between the two will be seamless. Are you interested in cooperation? KG seemed to be convinced in the end, so he nodded and said, happy cooperation, but Steve, you have to hurry up. I am going to go south in 3 days. It is said that the land there is very cheap. I plan to enclose and hoard land first. Even if the business fails, I will be able to have food and clothing without worries. Many people in Amsterdam, Rotterdam and other places in the country are also partying at the docks, preparing to board the ship and move to Australia. The British in Australia are also queuing at the docks, preparing to leave Australia and move to New Zealand and South Africa. In short, this may be the first large-scale migration in the world, and it is basically taking place in the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific in the Southern Hemisphere. Many future historians, due to their different standpoints, have different opinions on the migration activities coordinated by the two governments. However, it is undeniable that this migration is the beginning of the road to becoming a powerful country for the Netherlands, and it is also the first step for the Netherlands to become a global power. Many people even believe that this is more stable and smarter than the 3 wars that established Prussia's status as a global power. It also minimizes the population loss of the Netherlands and is the best example of the rise of a global power. Asshole, what is William IV trying to do? He actually reached an agreement with the British secretly. Napoleon III was angry and smashed the teacup in his hand hard on the hard ground, breaking it into many pieces in an instant. Olivier trembled all over and lowered his head 20 degrees. No, since the Netherlands has done it on the first day, we in the French Empire will naturally do it on the 15th. Olivier, tell people to prepare. We don't want to see the Dutch colonies in Central Africa too peaceful and keep the Dutch busy. Otherwise, they will think they are too quiet. Olivier nodded and replied, yes, Prime Minister, it seems that the Netherlands has been too comfortable recently. They actually think that they have reached a private settlement with Britain without saying a word to us. This is a kind of contempt for us. It seems that we have to teach them a lesson. William I said harshly. But Your Majesty, the Danish King Frederick VI is visiting the Netherlands now. If we act too drastically, be careful that William IV of the Netherlands, who is familiar with our next move, will choose to stand on the side of the Netherlands. Then we will lose more than we gain. But we can't let the Netherlands be too comfortable, William I complained dissatisfiedly. Of course, hasn't the Netherlands been thinking about Greece recently? Since they want it, then we will make the Netherlands suffer a little, even though we promised them to support William II to take the throne. Chapter 119, Will England and Prussia stage a battle for Botswana? 1862, the South African War, which had been entangled in the media for several months, finally ended with the Netherlands and Britain reaching an agreement. These overseas ethnic groups of the Netherlands left there to make room for Britain. Britain transferred South Australia for these 2 places for trading. At the same time, as various versions of the news were passed, countries also knew that the reason why Britain agreed to the coordination of the Netherlands was that a large gold mine was discovered in the Republic of Transvaal in South Africa. Dutch experts estimated that the reserves of the gold mine transferred by the Netherlands this time were greater than the current tonnage of gold stored in the Netherlands. With the release of this news, people from all over Europe began to flock to South Africa, and the British cabinet held a special press conference for this reason, requiring international miners to comply with British laws, and also expressed that everything was in a reasonable transaction for the agreement between Britain and the Netherlands. In the words of William IV of the Netherlands, cooperation is beneficial to both sides, and fighting is a loss for both sides. In short, the Dutch people embarked on a migration journey away from South Africa. With the departure of the Dutch, there are only indigenous people, British people, and other people from the German Confederation in Europe such as France and Prussia. However, these people add up to less than 100,000 people, which cannot have the same significant impact on British rule as the Dutch did before. But for some reason, these people are still supporting the Zulu kingdom. It was originally thought that everything was over, but it was unexpected that the 100,000 British troops were still blocked there. So the British government took out the courage to march with 100,000 troops. It took less than half a month to take down the Zulu kingdom, but Britain also incurred the cost of more than 20,000 deaths. In the past few months, more than 70,000 British died in South Africa, which can be regarded as the highest death rate in the short-term wars in just a few months since the founding of the country. The death of these 70,000 British troops had a profound impact on Britain, because the British Army even caused the lack of manpower in the defense of the homeland. The impact of this incident was very significant, because it broke the image of the hegemony that Britain had been giving people recently, that is, the embodiment of victory. The golden body was damaged, and governments of various countries began to not only fear Britain, but also despise it in their hearts. Britain could never return to the situation where it had the final say in Europe. From this invasion of African colonies, it can be seen that countries no longer care about occupying South and North Africa as Britain's sphere of influence, and no longer fear dissatisfaction with Britain. African colonization is still continuing. After completely occupying Congo, Dutch Colonel Braga hurriedly sent a report to the mainland that the mission was completed. Then, he was commended by William IV and directly promoted to the level of Major General. He also announced the formation of a Congo division. In addition to 3,000 Dutch soldiers, 7,000 people will be drawn from the East Indian Native Army to supplement Braga's army. At a diplomatic press conference on August 1, the Dutch government stated that the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs had issued a notice to all embassies in the Netherlands around the world, announcing that the Netherlands had complete sovereignty over both sides of the Congo River basin. At the same time, it was announced that Madagascar belonged to the Netherlands, because in mid-July, under the double-layer attack of land and sea led by Leon Bucher, the Dutch Deputy Chief of Staff, the largest island in Africa and the Indian Ocean eventually fell into the hands of the Netherlands, requiring all countries to respect the Netherlands' sovereign ruling position there. With the Netherlands taking the lead, other countries followed suit and informed all countries of their spheres of influence. On August 1, 1862, 1 month after Prussia landed, it sent a total of 50,000 Prussian troops and soon completely mastered Southwest Africa, that is Namibia. Unexpectedly, Prince Frederick Karl commanded the army to advance eastward, cross the traditional border of Namibia, and sent an army to Bechuanaland, that is Botswana, in northern South Africa, and quickly occupied the northwestern town of Gonzi and the northern central city of Mon in Bechuanaland. Finally arrived in Kasane and Katima Mulilo, where they encountered the Dutch army across the Zambezi River, so they stopped going north. The unwilling Prussian army continued to advance eastwards, and did not stop until it reached Baragwana, an important town in the west of southern Rhodesia. Because there, they met the British again. It turned out that after the Dutch people in the Transvaal Republic and the Orange Free State left, Britain quickly occupied the two countries, so it also had ambitions to annex Bechuanaland in the north of South Africa. Recently, they were preparing to go all the way north to take over the entire Bechuanaland, but they did not expect that Prussia would appear in the north of Bechuanaland so quickly. Therefore, the British Governor-General of South Africa, Job, was dissatisfied, so he also marched north to force the other side to retreat. But who was Prince Karl? He was a character who looked down on France at the beginning, so how could he withdraw from the group? The armies of the two countries finally met in the south of Hangzhou in Bechuanaland, and continued eastward, confronting each other until they reached Lake Doyo in Francistown occupied by the British. Britain also occupied the two southern towns of Gwanda and Mosvingo in southern Rhodesia. With the appearance of the British army, Prince Frederick Karl of Prussia finally stopped his advance and confronted Jobbin, the British Governor-General of South Africa, and the 100,000 British troops on the east and west sides of the Kalahari Desert. However, neither of them dared to start a battle on their own. After all, Jobbin knew that Britain had more than one enemy, while Prince Karl of Prussia had many targets and was unwilling to waste troops to engage in a war of attrition with Britain. In the end, the two armies retreated and formed a confrontation pattern. It was precisely because of this ambiguity that the two armies were more likely to get into a conflict in the later competition for southern Africa. Jobbins saw that Karl was unwilling to go to war with him, so he marched north and surrounded the French and Germans remaining in Pretoria in the Transvaal Republic. Just as he was about to eliminate the other side, Prince Karl of Prussia in the west led his army eastward again to Chaban, threatening South Africa. This made Jobbins angry, but he did not launch an attack on his own. He had no choice but to report everything here to London. London was naturally dissatisfied with Prussia's provocation, so the diplomatic level began to criticize Berlin harshly, asking William I and Bismarck in Berlin to restrain Prince Karl in southern Africa and not to do anything that would endanger the relationship between the two countries. An old power and a newly rising power collided in southern Africa. However, Prussia did not restrain Prince Frederick Karl. Instead, Prime Minister Bismarck announced in Berlin that Prussia had gained the dominant position in Cameroon and control over Namibia and Somalia, and asked all countries not to touch Prussia's control there. At the same time, he also announced that the northern part of Bechuanaland had also been controlled by Prussia, and asked Britain to recognize this. However, London was obviously opposed, because just after Berlin announced that Bechuanaland belonged to itself, British Foreign Minister Russell condemned Prussia's forcible occupation as shameful, and announced that Bechuanaland had been a vassal recognized by Britain more than a decade ago, and all countries in the world knew about this. However, Prussia disagreed with the British view, believing that a vassal state was not equivalent to a colony or territory. Britain was just interacting with the indigenous royal family at the time, and it did not involve the issue of territorial ownership. Therefore, Prussia had the right to claim the regime. The dispute between the two countries was not the entire dispute in southern Africa, because they soon welcomed two competitors. These two were Portugal and the Netherlands, which had always existed in southern Africa. Chapter 120, Britain, Portugal, the Netherlands and Portugal divide Zimbabwe. Portugal has always had colonies in Mozambique and Angola. For more than 100 years, a systematic management system for colonial rule has been formed here. In particular, Angola is also a base for exchanges between Portugal and Brazil. Therefore, Portugal has longed for South Africa and is ambitious. However, there is the Netherlands, which is not weaker than them, or even stronger than them. Later, Britain came, which made Portugal's desire to dominate southern Africa have never been realized. So, Lisbon changed its mind and gave up the extravagant hope of controlling the sea route of the Cape of Good Hope, and instead wanted to open up the land route between Mozambique and Angola to avoid British surveillance. In particular, it wanted to use the Zambezi River, which runs across the east and west, as a connection between Mozambique and Angola, taking advantage of the geographical advantage. However, the premise is that the Kingdom of Portugal needs to take Rhodesia between the two places, Zambia in the north and Zimbabwe in the south. However, Rhodesia is not so easy to take, because the southern part of Rhodesia is close to the former Transvaal Republic, which is called Southern Rhodesia. The Transvaal Republic has always been very wary of Portugal, fearing that Portugal would cooperate with Britain to encircle them, so Portugal has never dared to move, fearing that these desperate Dutch people would attack Portugal's Mozambique. So Rhodesia has been growing freely and wildly for decades. Except for the natives, it has become a thing without a master. Originally, it was thought that the Transvaal Republic would finally be dissolved, and it wanted to take advantage of the fact that Britain had not yet freed up its hands, just like other countries, but what Portugal did not expect was that the Netherlands was so cunning and the route of leaving was so tricky. It turned out that when the Dutch left, the old, weak, sick, disabled, and wounded, along with some of the troops, left there from the normal route, led by George Nash, the leader of the Orange Free State. But there was another troop of more than 10,000 soldiers, who crossed the northern border of the Transvaal Republic and headed north from southern Rhodesia. After reaching the Zambezi River, some of them quietly went north. Then they began to occupy northern Rhodesia north of the Zambezi River, and established a new military residence in Lusaka to form a military base. In the southwest, Maramba built a comprehensive defense system, making it difficult for the opponent to easily face the threat of the powerful Dutch garrison after crossing the Zambezi River. They took root in northern Rhodesia and quickly conquered the local natives. It turned out that the leader of this team was Martinus, the new deputy minister of the Netherlands and the former leader of the Transvaal Republic. Martinus's reputation resounded throughout the entire south of Central Africa, especially with his anti-British banner in South Africa in recent years, So he was vaguely one of the famous figures that the African natives wanted to make friends with the most. They were very familiar with his ferocity, so as soon as he arrived in northern Rhodesia, all the local natives did not dare to resist, not to mention that he was accompanied by 10,000 fully armed Transvaal troops. In addition, he actually left a large team stationed in the northern town of Chinoy in southern Rhodesia south of the Zambezi River. At this time, whether it was Portugal, Prussia or Britain, they all understood the Netherlands' purpose. It turned out that the Netherlands wanted to take over Congo, northern Rhodesia, Tanzania and Kenya, etc., with the same purpose as Portugal, and wanted to cut off the whole of Africa. Unfortunately, Portugal was cut off from this idea because northern Rhodesia fell into the hands of the Netherlands. Therefore, it could only look southward, preparing to eat meat and drink soup while others ate meat, but it was also unlucky. Because when it was preparing to march westward from the south, it encountered the oncoming Prussian and British armies, plus the Dutch Transvaal army in the north, and the four armies from all four directions met in Salisbury. Prussia occupied Bulawayo, Britain occupied Gwanda and Masvingo, Portugal occupied Muter, Harare and Bindra from south to north, and the Netherlands occupied Chinoy and Victoria Falls. The armies of the four countries all had ambitions to occupy the central town of Kwiru, but none of them took the initiative, because once they took action first, they were afraid that the other three parties would join forces to attack. So, this situation was settled. Southern Africa was in full swing, and Central Africa was not to be outdone. After the Austrian Empire occupied Nigeria, it saw that Prussia was not satisfied after occupying Cameroon, and it took over Somalia and Namibia one after another. It is even now confronting Britain in Bechuanaland, and confronting Britain in the south, Portugal in the east, and the Netherlands in the north and the west of southern Rhodesia. The four countries also divided up new colonies in northern Rhodesia, that is Zimbabwe, and their Emperor Franz Joseph I was naturally dissatisfied with this, because in his opinion, it was okay to lose to anyone, but not to Prussia, the traitor. So, the situation in Central Africa began to change significantly. The Austrian Empire suddenly increased its troops in Nigeria to 50,000, leaving 10,000 permanent residents in Ikeja in the west and 10,000 outside Port Harcourt in the southeast, and the remaining 10,000 deployed in Abuja, where the central governor's office is located. Of the remaining 20,000, 10,000 went west and took down Benin in the west and occupied Cotonou in just 1 month. The other 10,000 marched north to Niger, but he met two old opponents. It turned out that the French and Italians had already started their actions there. Even the towns of Niamey, Tal and Agadez in northwestern Niger had been taken south by the French Empire from occupied Mali and Algeria. The northeast, including the Jado Plateau and the Kawa Oasis, fell into the hands of the Italian kingdom occupying Libya. However, Austria still occupied Zinder in the south and went all the way east and north of Lake Chad. The three countries demarcated their territory in Niger by default, and everyone had a tacit understanding, and not even a single bullet was wasted. However, in the south, Austria would not be polite. The Austrian Empire already knew that the Prussian army in Cameroon had 20,000 troops stationed there, while the Austrian army here had 50,000 troops. The huge disparity made the Austrian Empire arrogant and somewhat looked down upon the Prussian army. Therefore, conflicts often arose in border towns such as Laro and Konka, especially in the huge deep forest of the Vogel Peak that spanned the two places. Soldiers from both countries often died inexplicably, so they accused each other of being the murderer. The disputes between the two countries on the African border were repeatedly fed back to the German Confederation Parliament, where the two German confederations often quarreled, and their respective allies cheered for their allies. Their tension in Africa was like adding fuel to the fire, attracting the attention of many people on the European continent, and the internal struggles of the German Confederation also triggered pessimistic thoughts among the member states about the future of the German Confederation. In short, everything that is happening in Africa now has caused an overflow effect on the European continent and has had a profound impact on the European pattern. Chapter 121, The Bombardment Incident in Mozambique. 1862, the Dutch government officially announced that it had completed the takeover of the entire Australian continent and Tasmania Island from the United Kingdom. For the convenience of management, the Netherlands announced that from now on, the Australian continent will be divided into 6 administrative provinces, namely the Western Australia Province in the west, with its capital Perth, the capital of South Australia Province is Adelaide, the capital of New South Wales Province is Sydney, The capital of Queensland Province is Brisbane. The Northern Territory was renamed the Northern Australia Province, with its capital Darwin. Tasmania Island is the sixth province of Australia. Tasmania Province, with its capital Hobart. In addition, the Dutch government also announced that the state of Victoria in southern Australia, which was originally under British rule, was changed to the province of William. Melbourne, the largest city in the province of William, became the administrative centre of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the Far East, and was also selected by the Kingdom of the Netherlands as the deputy capital of the Netherlands in the Far East. Thorbecke's cabinet will push the Dutch natives to immigrate 300,000 people to Australia in the remaining 4 months of this year from the government level, and plans to immigrate more than 1 million people next year. In addition, the Dutch government has issued a policy to encourage Dutch citizens to have more children, and the corresponding policy will be accompanied by the gradual promulgation of various benefits. In short, the ultimate goal of this wave of actions by the Dutch government is to get you to have more children. Starting from August 20th, a series of strange scenes appeared in the Netherlands. There were groups of immigrants everywhere. They started to join the migration army from Rotterdam, Amsterdam and other low-income families in the north of the Netherlands. A reporter from a Dutch newspaper interviewed a large family of 8 people who were migrating. Why do your family support the government's migration this time? Why not move? Although I also want to continue living in the Netherlands, there are too many capitalists and nobles here. They have been passed down from generation to generation. The fertile land here has long been divided up. There is no share for us. Now it's different over in Australia. According to what is said in the newspapers, although it is desolate, the land is fertile and easy to cultivate. The place where we migrate this time is Queensland in the east. It is said that there is plenty of water there, and the climate is similar to ours. Moreover, each person has 10 acres of land, and the 8 of us have 80 acres. I drool just thinking about it. Even if my family doesn't have a business mind, relying on 80 acres, it is enough to support ourselves, and even make us landlords and ranchers. Why give up such a good thing? Only a fool would not participate. Many people know that the Dutch government has described the benefits of reclaiming wasteland, such as each immigrant can get 10 acres of land, but these data are pale and powerless, and there is no appropriate description. However, after the above-mentioned reporter reported the reason for the family's immigration, especially after the newspaper specially circled the words such as landlord and rancher, everyone who read or heard it was tempted. Yes, anyway, the government subsidized the boat tickets and gave away land. Where else can such a good thing be found? Maybe you can really become a landlord? So, another wave of migration came. By the end of September, only 1.5 months had passed, and more than 150,000 Dutch people had arrived or were on the sea to Australia. This should be an easy task for completing 300,000 immigrants by the end of the year. And the Dutch government's backup plan appeared again, because now Europe is entering autumn, and in 2 months, it will enter the cold winter. And the government propaganda is that the climate in Australia is exactly the opposite of here in Europe. It is just beginning to enter spring there, which is a good time to cultivate and reclaim wasteland in Australia. If you miss it, you will be 1 year later than those who arrived first. Many people think that they still need to stay at home in the winter in Europe, so why not go to the southern hemisphere to try their luck? Even if they lose, it can be regarded as a long-distance trip. There are many people who think this way. In short, the Dutch government has done everything it can this time, with the goal of getting Australia back on track quickly. At this time, Africa was in chaos, like the spring and autumn and warring states period in the Far East. Since the beginning of August, after the 4 countries of England, Prussia, the Netherlands and Portugal and South Africa confronted each other in southern Rhodesia for a period of time, the Zulu Kingdom was officially swept into history as Britain completed the elimination of the Zulu Kingdom in the south. However, the actual controller of the Zulu Kingdom, Cunning, disappeared with his family. Some people said that he fled to North Africa. Some people said that the French and Germans finally boarded the ship returning to their homeland due to negotiations between France, Prussia, Austria and others, and Cunning also left in disguise to go to France or Prussia. However, some people said that he went to Dutch territories such as Congo and Tanzania. Some people even believe that he ran to Mozambique, which was ruled by neighboring Portugal, to hide, waiting for the opportunity to make a comeback. South Africa thus ended the war for half a year. With the demise of the Zulu Kingdom, the pressure on the other 3 countries doubled, especially the Kingdom of Portugal. Because the colonial Mozambique has a narrow and long terrain, running from north to south, it is all coastal. From Maputo in the south near the Zulu kingdom to Beira in the middle and then to the city of Mozambique in the north, the coastline is not much less than that of South Africa. It can be seen that the threat from the sea is actually much more serious for Mozambique than the threat from land. Moreover, in terms of strength and influence, Portugal is at the bottom of the four countries, so it has become the target of the other three countries. It is for this reason that the coastal areas of Mozambique have ushered in the threat of the British fleet's patrol. British warships demonstrate outside Maputo almost every day. For this reason, Portugal protested to London, asking Britain not to provoke disputes between the two countries. However, for some unknown reason, on August 16, a British warship made many provocative moves while cruising the Mozambique Channel, so the coastal defense artillery in the Beira port on the shore suddenly fired in response, but it hit the 6th-level sailing battleship. Not long after the 180 people on the battleship sent the telegram, everyone sank into the Mozambique Channel with the battleship. This is too much? This shell was so accurate that everyone in South Africa was stunned. Among them were Job, the governor of South Africa of the United Kingdom, Leon Bouker of the Netherlands, Frederick Karl, Prince of Prussia, and Felipe News, the governor of Mozambique of Portugal. The latter was especially terrified, because he was secretly cursing that the sick person had caused him trouble, and he also thought of the serious consequences. Sure enough, not long after, London, England sent a deadline warning to Lisbon, Portugal, demanding Portugal to hand over the murderer and compensate for the loss of more than £1 million. Otherwise, if Britain did not get a satisfactory response before September 1, it would retaliate against Portugal. This shocking news was reported in European newspapers on August 20, and people from all over Europe were stunned, looking southwest to the country on the west of the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal actually dared to provoke Britain, and even dared to directly sink British warships. Did Louis I get kicked in the head by a donkey? I think the Kingdom of Portugal is crazy. They must have seen that the Netherlands, which is almost the same size, has been doing well recently, so they also want to follow suit and step on Britain to complete the idea of standing on the giant. However, William IV was in 1840, and Louis I was in 1838. Do you really think that you are not much different in age from William IV, so you think you have the same ability? Let's talk about whether Portugal can withstand the anger of Britain. On August 25, 1862, the British First Fleet set out from the southern naval port of Portsmouth and headed southwest. At the same time, the Mediterranean squadron in the port of Gibraltar also sailed northwest. The storm is coming, and all Europeans hold their breath, ready to see how the situation of the Anglo-Portuguese dispute will develop. Thanks to the book friend Momo for the 579 points reward. Chapter 122, Italian-Portuguese Marriage. 1862, the First Fleet Squadron was blocked off the coast of Porto, the central city of northern Portugal, and then a round of artillery fire was launched. Although it did not fall on the land, the coastal residents fled in panic, causing more than half of the people in northern Portugal to die instantly. Some fled to the south of Lisbon, some ran west into Spain, and some crossed the northern border and crossed Spain to seek refuge in the French Empire. The Portuguese fleet in Porto Port chose to avoid it and swam to the south of Aveiro Port, without confronting the British fleet head-on. Lisbon in the south, as the capital, faced a Mediterranean fleet head-on, but you shot and I shot, and the direction of the shooting was all sideways, just like setting off fireworks, but no one wanted to continue to appreciate it. Although it looked fun, the Portuguese local fleet was blocked at the door and could not get out. To say that the Portuguese Navy is actually quite good, in the world's naval strength, it is even above the newly established Italy and has entered the top 10 in the world. However, because some warships were sent to Angola and Mozambique, and another part was in Porto, there were only 50,000 tons of warships left. Even so, its scale was not inferior to the First Fleet and the Mediterranean fleet of the 5 British fleets. Obviously, it was not inferior to the other side, and it was not impossible to defeat the other side because of the advantages of the local area, but many people were not optimistic about Portugal. Can Portugal be stable under such a north-south attack? In fact, Louis I inherited the throne of Portugal from his brother Parad V, who died at the age of nearly 24, on November 1 last year. It has been less than a year. Think about it. William IV became the King of the Netherlands a month later than him, but his performance amazed the whole of Europe. Therefore, he has always had a competitive mentality, especially when the Netherlands reported the European royal marriage meeting last time. He wanted to participate even though he was single, and even showed up at the end to show his status. But it ended before it even started. He has been dissatisfied for a long time. This time in Africa, he competed with other countries, especially among the four countries. The other Prussian kings William I and William IV and his three kings all inherited the throne in 1861. He and William I inherited the throne because the previous king was their elder brother and had no offspring. Prussia was so big and strong that Portugal did not dare to challenge it. On the contrary, William IV, who was 2 years younger than him and was now in the limelight, might be his whetstone and stepping stone. He felt that he was ready to move, but he was a little nervous. Prime Minister Barreto, what do you say? What should we do now? Nuno Barreto was the second Prime Minister of Portugal this time. He founded the historical party in the 1850s. As the leader of the party from 1856 to 1859, he represented the party in the election for the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Portugal. Shockingly, he succeeded and became the first Prime Minister of the party. But I don't know if it's because his charm is too great, and the others are relatively ordinary, so after him, no one can rise in the historical party. So until July 1860, he once again represented the historical party to run for election for the second time, and unexpectedly succeeded again. Therefore, Barreto is an assistant with familiar management experience for Louis I, and he is also a person he can trust at present. Your Majesty, I think that at present, the most important thing for us to stabilize the British is to find out the truth about the shelling in Mozambique. If it is really our army there that deliberately fired the cannon, then the Governor Bernardino Nogueira Figueiredo will be finished. Barreto had long been dissatisfied with Figueiredo, especially in the last election. He even maliciously attacked his family, so he had long hated him. It was a rare opportunity like this, so he naturally didn't mind adding insult to injury. Louis I said hesitantly, will this cause dissatisfaction from the Reconstruction Liberal Party? After all, Figueiredo is also an ally of the party. If you touch him directly, I am afraid it will cause a storm in Portuguese politics. When you fight, the situation in Portugal will be even more dangerous. Louis I looked at Barreto with concern and said, you know, your history party is still too young, and the Reconstruction Liberal Party has many supporters, and even non-partisans support them. At that time, it will be your history party that will suffer. Don't forget, you are in charge of the House of Commons now, but the House of Lords is in the hands of the Reconstruction Liberal Party and the Conservatives of the nobles. Be careful of their difficulties in the future. Your Majesty, I think it will be difficult for Britain to calm down its anger if it does not make some statements at this time. Barreto said regardless, after all, South Africa has made the British full of anger and nowhere to vent, but now Portugal has hit the blade. Isn't this asking for trouble? It is precisely because I understand the significance of the shelling in Mozambique and I understand that Figueiredo is a talent that I dismiss him to save him and avoid the British from directly demanding a shooting in retaliation. This will have a better result. This Louis I hesitated. Prime Minister Barreto was right. When the British get angry, few countries in the world can withstand it. There are countries that can withstand it, but Portugal is not one of them. Therefore, since there is no way to withstand it, then there is only a scapegoat. In fact, Louis I comforted himself secretly that this was not a scapegoat. After all, Figueiredo, as the governor of Mozambique, was not well managed. He knew that the Kingdom of Portugal could not afford to provoke a giant like Britain, but he still provoked the other side. Southern Rhodesia is rare in other countries, but will the Kingdom of Portugal lack this colony? Not to mention the distant, although Brazil has separated from Portugal and become independent, everyone in the world knows that it is managed by a branch of the Portuguese royal family, and the relationship between the two countries is definitely closer than that of allies. As for Angola, Mozambique and other major islands and peninsulas, Portugal can be said to be rich. It is not enough to provoke Britain or even Prussia for a piece of barren land in Africa. As for the Netherlands, Louis I is not afraid of the other party, and even has the idea of competing. Perhaps after overcoming this difficulty, he can fight with the Netherlands led by William IV in the south of Africa. After all, the deserts and wastelands there can be used for great display. I just don't know whether William IV's Netherlands can withstand the attack of our brave soldiers of the Kingdom of Portugal. Figueiredo doesn't know what he is thinking. Why didn't he take action earlier on the unowned lands such as Tanzania in the north? He actually regretted it after the Dutch took action. He is really a guy who is more likely to cause trouble than to succeed. Don't provoke the weak, but provoke the strong. It seems that Prime Minister Barreto is really right. He is really not suitable to be the governor of Mozambique. When he returns to Lisbon, he should continue to gain experience. Now that the situation has developed to this point, if you don't take the primary responsibility, can you still ask him, the Kingdom of Portugal, to take it? Thinking this way, he felt that Barreto was really thinking about the country, so in the end, he affirmed Barreto's opinion and agreed to dismiss Figueiredo. Barreto was happy in his heart, but his face did not show it. He pretended to hesitate for a while, and then said, "Your Majesty, in order to solve the oppression of the British, I have a way, but I don't know whether I should tell you." Hurry up. At this time, what else should not be said? After all, Louis I was young, 24 years old, and had just taken over Portugal. Many of the ways to control subordinates that needed to be mastered were still far from perfect. However, this was exactly what Barreto needed, and it was also what the historical party, which had just entered its development period, needed. In order to break the political structure of Portugal and deepen the relationship between the historical party and the royal family, he even planned to introduce foreign aid outside of Portugal's internal forces, and this foreign aid was the Kingdom of Italy. When he single-handedly presided over the marriage with the Italian princess as the Queen of the Kingdom of Portugal, then the pillow talk of the historical party could be successfully established. Your Majesty, Cavour, the former Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Italy, was once a good friend of mine. During my last term as Prime Minister, I met with King Vittorio Emanuele II of Italy on his many introductions, and had a very pleasant conversation with both of them. In order to help Italy, led by Vittorio Emanuele II, to be recognized by other countries, Cavour proposed the idea of an Italy-Portugal marriage. However, it was the former King Pedro V who rejected the marriage plan and chose the former Queen instead, which led to the failure of the marriage between the two countries. With the death of Prime Minister Cavour last year, I originally thought that King Emanuele II of the Kingdom of Italy had given up, but he wrote to convey that he still had the idea of marriage a few days ago. Barreto said, although the Kingdom of Italy is newly established, they have almost unified the Apennine Peninsula and are already one of the major powers in Europe. If Portugal can get such strong foreign aid at this time, then Portugal's crisis this time can be. But, does Vittorio Emanuele II dare to stand up when Portugal is facing British oppression? You won't know until you try, right? That's right. At this time, Louis I also agreed. At the same time, this attitude also showed Barreto that Louis I did not oppose the marriage between the royal families of Italy and Portugal. August 30, 1862. The Kingdom of Italy announced that it would marry the Kingdom of Portugal. Princess Maria Pia of Savoy, the daughter of Vittorio Emanuele II, would marry King Louis I of Portugal on October 6, 1862. One wave has not settled, and another wave has risen. When there was a huge conflict between Britain and Portugal, the Kingdom of Portugal obviously sought foreign aid. And Italy also stood up with enough spirit, calling on Britain and Portugal to suspend their mutual threats and resolve disputes peacefully. Italy is willing to act as a coordinating country to help the two countries restore relations. Afterwards, France and the Netherlands also stood up and issued the same appeal, asking Britain to remain calm. Spain has always had close relations with Portugal and is more like an ally than an ally. It even called on Britain to hold a meeting in Madrid for peace talks. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Dutch Diplomatic Feast. On the podium of the Diplomatic Academy in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, William IV has become a frequent visitor here, because he is the honorary tutor here. Every month, there is a general meeting of teachers and students to promote his diplomatic philosophy. This was because the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Huysbeth van, pleaded with him. At the beginning, he didn't know why he agreed, but now he can't get away. As he got familiar with it, he no longer resisted, but felt that it was very beneficial to his rule. During this period, other departments also established the same directly affiliated colleges to train professional talents. Among them, the Industrial College, Agricultural College, Finance College, Business College, Research and Technology Institute, etc. have become the places of yearning for graduates from universities in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. At 9 a.m. on the last Friday of every month at the Diplomatic Academy, he gave a lecture to all teachers and students in the hall of the Institute of Political Research of the Diplomatic Academy. However, today was a little special because many people came to the Diplomatic Academy today. To be precise, almost everyone in the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs and ambassadors abroad came to participate. Every quarter, they will return to Amsterdam in the last month to report face-to-face on the situation of the country they are in, so that the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs can accurately grasp the dynamics of various countries and implement the most powerful and beneficial foreign policy for the Netherlands. Therefore, in addition to Foreign Minister Gisbert Van, there are also Prime Minister Thorbecke, Deputy Foreign Minister Venus, Ambassador to the United Kingdom Mike Davis, Ambassador to the French Empire Jefferson Brin, Ambassador to the Russian Empire Calvin Collin, Ambassador to Prussia Nicholas Pearson, Ambassador to the Austrian Empire Jason Ma, Ambassador to the United States Al Gore, Ambassador to Belgium John Carl, Ambassador to Spain Keynes, Ambassador to the Kingdom of Portugal Weiss Weir, in addition to other staff members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Today's conference has about 300 people. Since the 18th century, Europe has been in flames. Does anyone know what major wars have occurred in Europe? Every time William IV gave a lecture, there would be an interactive plot, and this plot was about feelings, but he wanted to ask questions. And it was not the kind of pretending, not that he would ask questions in the past, and other staff members would designate people to answer. He was not very satisfied with this, so now he directly faced the full seats below and asked questions directly. This is a sophisticated method to test whether the other party has learned this college life course. This time, William IV did not look at the area where students were going, but at the area where ambassadors from abroad came back to report on their work. This excited the students of the Diplomatic Academy who were already envious, especially some female students who showed ambiguous eyes, because there was the famous ambassador to Prussia, Pearson, who was only 27 years old and unmarried. There was also the most promising ambassador to the United Kingdom, Davis, who was 32 years old, but with the recent quarrels between Britain and the Netherlands, Davis was the most direct communication object between the two countries, and no one would deny his role. In short, these students who had not yet left the academy and entered the Ministry of Foreign Affairs seemed to see their future in front of them, and their blood was boiling. William IV ignored the students' hot eyes, because he had seen a lot in his previous life. That was the look of a group of fans meeting their idols. But this made him a little excited. Although Europe has started to develop well in drama, it is all internal development of each country. There are no transnational drama idols. If the Netherlands has made some achievements in this regard, then in terms of image, the Netherlands is learning from the United States in this era and occupying a positive image in the world to increase its soft power diplomacy. His thoughts turned in an instant. He finally said to Jefferson Breen, the oldest ambassador to France in the foreign mission, Ambassador Breen, you have worked hard in France over the years. Everyone present here should know Ambassador Breen more or less. He is the most experienced envoy in our Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He is 54 years old this year. He has contributed more than 30 years of youth to the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. For such a person, shouldn't everyone applaud? Clap, clap. Including Thorbecke, everyone stood up and applauded Breen. Thank you very much, thank you colleagues and future colleagues. Your Majesty, why do you feel like you are setting a trap for me when you say that? After praising me, you are going to stump me with questions and make me lose face. Breen spoke in a serious tone, and his words made everyone quiet down. They were all stunned. William IV smiled at him like a gentleman, waiting for the next words. But I like this kind of Your Majesty, because I like difficult challenges. Ha ha ha. Breen's cold jokes made the atmosphere on the scene mobilized by him, which made many people sigh that Breen is worthy of being a veteran of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Apart from anything else, just the ability to mobilize the atmosphere made many young juniors envious. Your Majesty, Europe has suffered many disasters since the 18th century, but most of them are man-made. In chronological order, the well-known European wars alone include the War of the Spanish Succession, the Northern War, the War of the Austrian Succession, the 7 Years' War, the Anglo-Dutch War, the Anti-French Alliance, the Crimean War, etc. Europe was in the 18th century with constant artillery fire. In chronological order, the well-known European wars alone include the War of the Spanish Succession, the Northern War, The War of the Austrian Succession, the 7 Years' War, the First Anti-French Alliance, etc. William IV spread his hands to show his innocence and that he had no intention of framing anyone, but this action made people laugh. Very good, these frequent wars have stimulated the rapid development of military technology, but it also means that there are more and more armies and more money is spent. William IV said to the audience seriously, in the mid-18th century, more than 1.5 million land forces and 400 main battleships were deployed in Europe. In order to survive in the fierce competition, the major European powers had to be capable. Ho, Your Majesty, what you said is very apt. Yes, although Your Majesty is young, his lessons are easy to understand and there is no philosophy. We have all benefited a lot. In the ambassador area, Jason Ma, the Dutch ambassador to the Austrian Empire, smiled at Nicholas Pearson, the Dutch ambassador to Prussia next to him and said, "It seems that in the past few years, Your Majesty has become more and more majestic like a king." Pearson asked back, "Hasn't Your Majesty always been like this? I say, you too, you haven't been in those two hostile countries for too long, have you been infected? How come you are now bringing the atmosphere of hostility between the two countries back to the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs?" The speaker was Davis, the ambassador to the United Kingdom. "I say, Davis, you are meddling in other people's business. We two brothers are just joking. You should look at Weisswill next to you. I guess he's thinking about how to communicate with you recently to exchange his worries about the British-Portuguese War that is now on the verge of war." The speaker was Jason Ma. Hearing Jason Ma talking about himself, Weisswill smiled bitterly and said, "People in Lisbon are a little confused now." Therefore, because it was convenient for reporting to the Portuguese side, many countries built their embassies in Portugal in coastal areas. Now everyone is considering whether to evacuate the embassy. On the stage. So, how did the European powers develop? William IV said, "Just now I asked Mr. Bolin, the ambassador to France. Now I want to ask him, how did France develop?" Chapter 124 I have a gun, do you have money? Everyone in the audience knew that William IV would have a backup plan, but they didn't expect that it would be like a boomerang and ask again. They couldn't help but look at Jefferson Bryn, the Dutch ambassador to France. Bryn smiled bitterly and said, "See, I told you there was a trap." Ho, William IV pressed his hands downward, and the scene suddenly became quiet. Seeing this, Bryn said seriously, "In my opinion, the most basic characteristic of France's development into a great power is, why should we pay back the money we borrowed based on our ability? Ladies and gentlemen, in Europe, except for the distant Russian Empire in Eastern Europe, France was the most populous, largest, and most agriculturally developed country in Europe in the 18th century. Geographically, France straddles the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean, has many domestic rivers, and has extremely developed inland shipping. These inherent advantages have made Paris the political and economic center of France and even Europe. The French monarchs took advantage of Paris to build a central government. A strong government gave the French king the ability to levy heavy taxes and build a strong army. In 1701, the French king supported his grandson to become the king of Spain, and Spain became an ally of France, but because of this, European countries believed that France was too strong. Therefore, throughout the 18th century, even the slightest expansion of France would trigger a collective anti-French alliance backlash from other European countries. These successive kings of France found that if they wanted to continue to expand their hegemony on land, the scale of debt would be extremely large, and the problem of centralization in France became more and more prominent. In order to quickly centralize power, Louis XIV turned the nobles into subjects. The entire bureaucratic system lacked a professional civil service team. Therefore, the government's top leaders did not know how to manage finances, while the grassroots levied heavy taxes, resulting in very low tax efficiency. By the time of Louis XV, France finally found the right strategy, giving up the struggle for hegemony on the European continent, developing the navy, and relying on resources to become independent in North America, and competing with Britain for maritime hegemony. When France gave up the war on the European continent, the major powers were unwilling to be enemies with this great power, and Britain found that it could not find an ally willing to contain France. Britain also found that its maritime hegemony was being replaced again. Unfortunately, France's strategic shift came too late, because the two financial bankruptcies during the reign of Louis XV destroyed France's national credibility. Louis XV's debt scale was comparable to that of Britain, but the interest was more than twice that of Britain. Finally, when France was about to face its third bankruptcy, at the end of the 18th century, a great revolution occurred in France. After the Great Revolution, thanks to advanced political concepts and professional talents, France demonstrated a strong overall combat effectiveness. However, France led by Napoleon was still dragged down by wars among European countries, and everything returned to the distant point. Ladies and gentlemen, from the defeat in 1815 to the current French Empire, it has been nearly 50 years. France is still a powerful country, but it has never won the title of one of the three. Therefore, for France, nurturing is a bitter memory. Pa 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 bursts of applause rang out, and after Breen sat down, William Ivey looked at Davis, the ambassador to the United Kingdom. What can make us here understand the historical process of the country better than the ambassadors to various countries? So, Davis, what about Britain? Davis said calmly, everyone, I found that the situation in Britain is exactly the opposite of France. The reason why Britain developed is that it has an endless source of wealth and endless fighting. William Ivey asked what everyone wanted to ask. Oh? Endless source of wealth and endless fighting? How do you say that? Everyone is naturally very familiar with Britain, and they are even more curious about why Britain has developed on such a large scale, especially in comparison with France, a precedent. Britain is an island country on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean in Europe. The war on the European continent cannot reach the British Isles. Therefore, Britain does not need a highly authoritarian government. Local autonomy and parliamentary sovereignty have become the tradition of British politics. Britain's political structure tradition has two aspects of influence on finance. First, the government's direct tax increase will cause strong resistance from Parliament, so the government has to invent many indirect taxes, such as stamp duties, tobacco and alcohol taxes, tariffs, etc. The tax burden of the British is actually heavier than that of France, but indirect taxes make the British feel that they are not as direct as France, and the people will not be so heartbroken. Secondly, the British government is always supervised by Parliament and must strictly abide by fiscal discipline. Throughout the 18th century, Britain has always been the country with the most debt in Europe, but its finances have never gone bankrupt. Therefore, Britain's credit rating is very good, which in turn reduces Britain's cost of borrowing and financing. Everyone present nodded involuntarily, which is very easy to understand. Two people borrowed money at the same time, one paid it back on time, and the other could not. When the two borrowed money again, although both of them borrowed money, the second person was required to increase the interest rate when he borrowed money, which was much higher than the first person. From the 7 Years' War to the American War of Independence, both Britain and France had debts of more than £200 million, but Britain only had to pay £7 million in interest each year, while France had to pay £14 million. With twice the interest, France was killed by Britain in this money-burning competition with the interest difference. By 1815, when the countries defeated Napoleon's France, Britain was in debt of £800 million, but because of its good reputation, Britain did not go bankrupt. So I think when the Kingdom of the Netherlands faces Britain, we should pay attention to the fact that Britain has such a strong ability to repay, which is something that no other country has. This is mainly due to the huge wealth created by the Industrial Revolution originated in Britain. The Netherlands needs to be vigilant about this. Speaking of this, it must be said that since winning the trade war with us in the Netherlands in the 17th century, Britain and its colonies have formed a separate economic circle. Britain is the only consumer market for raw materials in the colonies, and the mainland processes the raw materials into industrial products and then exports them to the European continent. After years of accumulation, the market and technology cultivated by the British began to breed the Industrial Revolution in the middle of the 18th century, and social wealth grew explosively. Industrial products need markets. Ladies and gentlemen, what the British fear most is that the European continent will unite and impose trade sanctions on Britain, so Britain will never allow the emergence of hegemons in European countries. This is the reason why Britain has always regarded the continental balance of power diplomacy as the golden rule for hundreds of years. While playing political balance on the European continent, Britain was actively expanding its colonies overseas. During the Napoleonic continental blockade, Britain relied on its colonies to fight against the entire European continent. On the contrary, the European continent would be very uncomfortable without British industrial products. However, because Britain's population is limited and its labor costs are much higher than those on the European continent, It is not cost-effective to maintain a strong army to interfere in the European continent. The most cost-effective way is naturally to find an ally on the European continent as a strategic fulcrum. Britain only needs to lend money to this ally. And this ally must have potential, strong military quality, and be in a position that can strike at Britain's enemies, and it is also short of money. And the country that Britain finally chose is Prussia. Pearson, it's your turn. There was another round of applause from the audience. Seeing William IV looking over, Nicholas Pearson stood up, first performed a noble etiquette to King William IV, and then said, "The most confident sentence of the Prussian cabinet is, 'I have guns, do you have money?'" Chapter 125 European Gendarmerie. Prussia believes in "I have guns, do you have money?" Prussia is a military regime established by the Teutonic Knights after they returned to Europe. This country has a strong tradition of militarism. Pearson was at ease in front of hundreds of people, and he was worthy of being a well-known figure in the new generation of diplomacy in Europe. In the early days, Prussia was just a small Eastern European country on the Baltic Sea coast. In 1619, Brandenburg and Prussia formed a common federation. Since then, Prussia has officially joined and become the sphere of influence of the German nation. Since the 18th century, Prussia has been preparing for war. With a population outside the top 10 in Europe, it has supported the third largest army in Europe. At its peak, the number of troops even reached more than 150,000. The country's military training is very strict. Soldiers have to shoot more than 165 pounds of training bullets a year, while French soldiers of the same period go to the battlefield with 30 shots. In actual combat, when infantrymen of other countries can fire 3 shots a minute, Prussian soldiers have already completed 4 shots. Nicholas Pearson said in a very serious tone, "Everyone, our neighbor is already very powerful. It is so powerful that the Russian Empire has begun to be wary of the Kingdom of Prussia in recent years. The Austrian Empire is even more afraid to attack Prussia. The Netherlands needs to be vigilant about this country." During the War of Succession of the Austrian Empire, although Britain was an ally of the Austrian Empire at that time, it urged Austria to accept Prussia's invasion of Silesia. With the support of Britain, Prussia's territory increased by 1/3 at once. Just like other countries have a powerful leader to make them rise, Frederick the Great of Prussia was keenly aware that what Britain cared most about was weakening the strength of Austria and France, 2 major land powers, and these 2 countries happened to be the biggest obstacles to Prussia's expansion. However, at that time, the commodity economy in Central Europe was not as developed as that in Western Europe, and Central European countries did not have the ability to borrow heavily. In order to support the war machine, the 2 countries hit it off. Britain lent money to Prussia for development, which weakened the dominance of these countries over the European continent, and Britain and Prussia formed an alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest advantage of Prussia is that their elite army has always been in an upper hand against the bloated Austrian army. There is also a large number of German confederations between Prussia and France as a buffer. Prussia cannot be eliminated by France in a quick battle. This position is exactly where Britain thinks it is a good place to invest. Therefore, since the War of the Austrian Succession, the alliance between Britain and the Kingdom of Prussia has been indestructible. As long as Britain continues to give blood transfusions to Prussia, Prussia will continue to weaken the strength of France and Austria on the European continent and compress their influence in Central and Western Europe. The smart Prussia will be able to use Britain's financial resources to expand its own power. In the end, by the 1850s, it became the second only to the Austrian Empire in the German Confederation. During the 7 Years' War, Prussia received more than £6.5 million in funding from Britain every year. This money was just a drop in the bucket for Britain, but it was enough for Prussia to keep fighting with surrounding countries until the male population was almost exhausted. However, when Prussia fought a war with Denmark over Schleswig in the 1850s, Austria began to feel a sense of crisis in the German Confederation. Prussia, which wanted to gain leadership, resisted Austria, but in the end, the Russian Empire stood up behind Austrian Emperor Joseph Franz. Although France expressed neutrality, it was also wary of Prussia, the new entrant. It seemed impartial, but in fact it favored the Austrian Empire. Britain, a country that had long supported Prussia, became indifferent when Prussia needed its help. This made Prussia completely realize the other side's ruthlessness. Therefore, after signing many agreements and recognizing the humiliating treaty content of the Austrian Empire to the German Confederation, Prussia no longer had the previous intimacy and enthusiasm for Britain. Even Queen Victoria's idea of exchanging her eldest daughter, Princess Victoria, for Crown Prince Frederick to save the alliance between the two countries was ignored by many Prussian hardliners in power. Ladies and gentlemen, Prussia is a strong country with a well-trained army. With the help of British funds for decades and hundreds of years, the army has risen and became one of the 5 major European powers in the late anti-Napoleonic period. However, they were a Central European country at that time. With the capture of the Rhine province in the German Confederation in 1815, they became a Western European country and bordered us. They posed a great threat to the Netherlands, and we had to guard against them. However, the existence of the Russian Empire, which has always been an ally of the Netherlands, made the Kingdom of Prussia hesitate to make enemies with us. The above Papa William IV did not let the next person speak directly this time, but ended the topic and said, "Prussia is now an ally of us." It seems inappropriate for us to say this about each other, but we are here at the Diplomatic Academy, a grand event for the Dutch diplomatic community, so we can talk about your doubts without hesitation. Just like what Ambassador Pearson said just now, in his opinion, Prussia is like that. When he said this, everyone may feel what kind of image another country has in the heart of an ambassador. You can even look up some of the work that Ambassador Pearson did in Prussia in the past, and how it revolved around how to contact this country. This is a window that allows you students to quickly think about problems from a work perspective. Since students can do it, colleagues can also learn from each other. This is not competition, but mutual promotion. William IV did not participate in any comments on Pearson's attitude towards Prussia. Instead, he unfolded the purpose of this course. After explaining it, he said to Calvin Collin, the Dutch ambassador to the Russian Empire, "Since we are talking about the Russian Empire, Collin, as the Dutch ambassador stationed in the Russian Empire, tell everyone how you remember the rise of the Russian Empire." "Yes, Your Majesty." Calvin Collin is 37 years old this year and can be considered a veteran in the Dutch diplomatic community. Before becoming the Dutch ambassador to the Russian Empire, he was the Dutch ambassador to the Kingdom of Greece, so he has rich diplomatic experience. To understand the Russian Empire, you should actually understand the people of that country. In St. Petersburg, many well-known writers self-deprecatingly call the Russians two-legged animals, and often ridicule the Russians as being cheaper than the Prussians. The Russian Empire has been an ally of the Netherlands for hundreds of years, and Collin actually said this, which made everyone present feel strange. As soon as this comment came out, the venue suddenly quieted down, and even William IV had a calm face. Collin had anticipated this consequence a long time ago, but he was determined and didn't care, because he was confident that when he told everyone what he knew, everyone would choose this statement. I would like to ask all readers for recommendation votes. There have been too few recently. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.